find the reference because it wasn't there within the system. But do you want to just answer that question?
I've just got a couple of points just to try and help a little bit if possible. So, open source research is not unusual in police information and intelligence gathering, and it's specifically called out in the public order, public safety authorised professional practice as good practice to do online open source research. So that is not unusual. This was briefed into the first gold meeting very early on, and at that point, from everything that I've read, West Midlands Police were planning on receiving Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. So at that point, the reference, almost the implication that was erroneously searched for to try and build evidence to justify it's not a fair reflection of the reality. The open source research is good practice. It incorporates the broader understanding for your threat assessment. So the open source research was a mistake, and that has been called out. AI was not used. Just in relation to the point you raised, forgive me, again, my understanding is, and I wasn't at the SAG, but my understanding from the SAG was that they discussed the full range of risks, and that included the risk from pro-Palestinian protests. So my understanding is that if you look at the intelligence picture and the information developed over time, it was clear that there were people locally who were very unhappy about Maccabi Tel Aviv coming to Birmingham, and that there were threats, and there was information intelligence of those threats. So we had the rising tide of concern locally, and then we had the additional information about Maccabi Tel Aviv and the potential threat of them attacking community members as opposed to rival fans. And those two things together, I think, presented a reasonable position for the police to say, we want to protect the public. And this was about a reasonable decision to try to protect the public.
Can I bring Johnny Reid in?
It's a question specifically for Mr. Roberts. We've heard a lot about Lord Mann's report. It's one quite concrete piece of research on the actual football team that we are discussing. When you received the report from Lord Mann, what did you do with it?
So first of all, I will say I've had a dialogue with Lord Mann over a number of years. It's always been a very positive dialogue. I think he always comes from a motivated point of view of the fans' perspective. And that's not just over the issues involving Israeli fans, particularly around disabled fans. He's a real champion, so I listen to Lord Mann and we have a good dialogue. That said, in terms of the report, it was marked private and confidential. I made a number of attempts to try and arrange a meeting with him. There were 2 meetings arranged, and I offer no criticism. He's a busy man and things happen, and I understand there was a technology failure on at least one occasion. But we never actually managed to speak, despite a number of attempts to try and speak to him. As I offer it as no criticism, because I speak to Lord Mann a lot, and I think he quite enjoys speaking to me on occasions. When I look at his report and the relevance of it to the risk assessment process in this particular case, the salient point, and it's been brought out already, the distinction between intelligence and information. The relevant intelligence in this was the narrative around what happened on the night with Amsterdam. That was superseded with first-hand evidence by West Midlands Police speaking directly to the Dutch police. The rest of it is a narrative and an opinion by Lord Mann, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with. So as such, it would fall into the category of information. So it wouldn't be something that I fed into the risk assessment process, because I think the relevant element was superseded, as I say, by the conversation with the Dutch National Police.
Thank you. So on the intelligence gathering operation then, could you just give us a quick overview of, other than the conversation that you had with the Dutch police and the Googling, what official documents you analysed that fed into your risk matrix?
Yeah, so because of the nature of the football fixture, and this is not normally the case for a normal football fixture, you wouldn't necessarily identify an intelligence bronze commander. So in effect, you have somebody who's an intelligence professional whose role is to collate and gather all sources of information and intelligence to help inform a threat assessment on behalf of the commander. That then comes by way of, I think it was a weekly sit rep actually, I don't know whether that increased nearer to the fixture, but in effect the intelligence operatives create a document that is considered by the gold and silver commanders within their meetings and the use of the national decision-making model. And that contains sensitive intelligence, intelligence flows from a range of sources.
Specifically, what do you think was the kind of clincher, other than the conversation that you had with the Dutch police and the open AI Googling information.
I wouldn't say there was a clincher. I think it was very clear from looking at the information intelligence flow and the feedback from community.
Talk about this intelligence flow. I'm just trying to get a sense of what that intelligence flow and information actually looks like, because from everything that we've read and seen, it boils down to one conversation that wasn't minuted, and some inaccurate information about the football team in question. So can you put us right then? I mean, I'm giving you the opportunity. Tell us what the information and
intelligence
was.
comes in a range of forms. People giving information and intelligence, which is then assessed and sanitised, and it's then looked to be triangulated and corroborated. It's given a handling code, and then it's listed.
I'm not asking about the process. I don't want to know about the process. I'm actually asking for specific bits of information and intelligence. If you're saying to me that we are not entitled to that, or that it's private and confidential, please do say that.
What I'm just trying to do is be cautious about how I speak, because, so for example,
being very cautious.
Thank you. There is something around, so in policing you have informants, for example. In policing you have technical feed, you have a range of sources of information intelligence online, chatter from people, human intelligence sources. So you have a range of intelligence that comes together that is then overlaid with a range of professional judgment.
Thank you.
Can I help you just a little bit with that? Because I think I sort of see where you're coming from. The types of intelligence, obviously you get intelligence from the community, from individuals, and that intelligence is fed into the system, but it's made in the form of intelligence reports. And we received a number of those intelligence reports off different people, which fed in to what Mike has just been receiving. So in terms of like, what are they? You know, I think that's what you're getting at.
I'll tell you what I'm struggling with, right? I'll tell you what I'm struggling with. The main source of intelligence is from a private conversation with the Dutch police, which they have, which they are denying the contents of, which they have publicly doubled down on since this news was published. That's your main source of intelligence, and that you're willing to share publicly that the Dutch police have effectively lied to their public and their press, but you're not willing to tell us the other sources of information. So it appears that that is really the only intelligence and information that you received,
so
and that the decision was based solely on that, and that we can corroborate, because the Dutch police have said that it's categorically not true. So I'm trying to get a sense of what this decision was based on.
Can I just offer a view as kind of relatively objective, as far as I can be, given I'm sat on this side of the table? But I made the reference point to the tipping point in the review, because up until the intelligence from the Dutch police and briefing that we've discussed, it was fairly clear to me that West Midlands Police were fully working on the basis that they were going to host the Israeli fans, the Maccabi fans. There were contingencies in place and they were exploring them. And it had some similarities to operations I've looked at in the past where there was considered high risk. I've got to say, I've been national lead for 11 years, and before that, 5 years in GMP handling most of the big events there, and this is a unique situation.
How many times have away fans been denied access to?
Rare occasions. I think we came close to a decision around Ajax fans, ironically, a number of years ago as a result of their behaviour. We came, personally, my closest experience was the first time Glasgow Rangers played in Manchester after you may remember the European Europa League final where there was a riot in Manchester.
I remember it well.
Remember it well. The next time Glasgow Rangers got drawn to play in Manchester was against Manchester United, and there were real concerns there, and one of the options we considered was banning Glasgow Rangers fans. The accommodation we reached there was that they all went to Wigan. They, in effect, had a fan zone at Wigan, and were only given their tickets once they got on the coaches to Manchester.
I think there was a proposal here to have a fan zone in Walsall, wasn't
Absolutely.
there? Yeah.
So that's the parallel I see, where we had all the Glasgow Rangers fans go. It was by consent. We don't really have a power to do it by coercion. Glasgow Rangers worked with the authorities, and in effect they all met. They were fans groups. We roughly knew who they were. They got the ticket on the way to Old Trafford, and they were escorted straight to the ground and straight out. That's the closest parallel I can think to this. And in the preparations for this event, West Midlands Police looked at an option to use a local football ground to try and do something. So I think it was clear that from the initial point up until the point of the Dutch intelligence, the plan was to host the fans. I think the tipping point is referred to there. It's the Dutch intelligence where there's clearly a shift. In terms of corroboration...
Welcome to the Martin Dub Show. That was the inquiry, West Midlands Police. Now let's go to Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is speaking.
Coming over here, and I said, I love those Republicans, and I meant it. I said, except for maybe a couple I don't love. But the people in this room, I don't know if those couple are here. I don't know. I don't care if they're here or not. But we love you, and you've done an amazing job. You love the country. You're doing what's right for the country. And I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year, the most successful House Republican majority in decades. And we did it with not a big majority. Right? This was not a big majority, but it's a unified majority, and it's people that know what it takes to make America great again. So together we had 12 months of unprecedented success in 2025, and now we're going to make history and break records with the epic midterm victory that we're going to pull off. It just doesn't seem to happen for people that win the presidency. It's an amazing phenomenon. You know, you win the presidency, and we sure as hell are having a successful presidency, I will say that. But even if it's a successful presidency, there's been nothing like what we're doing. We had a very good day 2 days ago, too. But even if it's successful, they don't win. I don't know what it is. There's something psychological, like you vote against. You can win by a lot. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions. We won everything. But they say that when you win the presidency, you lose the midterm. So you're all brilliant people. Most of you are in this business longer than me. That makes me smarter than you. Because look where I am, right? No, it doesn't. But I wish you could explain to me what the hell's going on with the mind of the public, because we have the right policy. They don't. They have horrible policy. They do stick together. They're violent. They're vicious. You know, they're vicious people. And they stick together like glue. They don't have a couple of the people that we have. A couple of people, not too many, really very few. And that's why I want to just say that before we go any further, I want to express our tremendous sorrow at the loss of a great member, a great member, Congressman Doug LaMalfa, who passed away yesterday, as you probably have heard. And he was the leader of the Western Caucus, a fierce champion on California water issues. He was great on water. He wanted to release the water, he'd scream at him. And a true defender of American children. He was a defender of everybody. And our hearts go out to his wife, Jill, and his entire family. You know, he voted with me 100% of the time. And by the way, he wasn't a 3 o'clock in the morning person. Do you know what I mean by that? Where the speaker goes, sir, could you call up? Could you call? I said, what time is it, speaker? Sir, it's 3 in the morning. Could you make a couple of calls? How many? 9. So I'd start calling 3 in the morning. I said, I shouldn't use any names. I'm just going to create problems. But hi, Jim, and I'm not talking about Jim Jordan. I never had a call 3 in the morning for him. But I said, hi, Jim, how you doing? I just called to say hello, 3 in the morning. Okay, sir. Sir, you haven't spoken to me in 3 years, and it's now 3 in the morning, so I know what you want. You want my vote? And usually almost always they'd give it. But they wanted to be called. And with Doug, I never had a call. He was with us right from the beginning. I love those guys. I must say I probably love them the best, the guys that I don't have to call. They know we're doing the right thing. I have a couple that are going to be with us all the way, but they just want the call. They want love. They need love. They're more insecure than most of you. It's true. No, most of you are secure people. You're all laughing. No, most of you are secure people. I had a couple say, look, I could have Trump call me all the time. I just have to break his ass a little bit. And he'll be calling. But I appreciate those. We actually had a little party. We opened up a beautiful section of the White House in the Rose Garden, and we had a party for all of those people that I never speak to and vote for me. And, you know, I spoke to Doug, but I didn't speak to him about, I've had a problem. And I was really saddened by his passing and was thinking about not even doing the speech in his honor. But then I decided that I have to do it in his honor. I'll do it in his honor because he would have wanted it that way. He would have wanted it that way. He would have said, do that speech. Are you kidding me? Do the speech, big guy. But he was a fantastic person. Man, that was a quick one. I don't know quite yet what happened, but boy, it's a tough one. He was just with us. He was our friend, all of us, every one of us. And I also want to send our best wishes to Congressman Jim Baird and his wife, who are recovering from a car accident. They're going to be okay, but they had a pretty bad accident. And we're praying that they get out of that hospital very quickly. He's going to be fine. She's going to be fine, but it was a bad accident. And I want to thank the man who has been central to so many of our triumphs. He really has been. He's the guy that would call me to make those calls all the time. He's always working. And he's a nice person. You know, he's a high quality person. But I want to tell you, he's a very tough cookie. I've seen both sides. Not often do I have to see the other side because he's just, by nature, he's a very fine, religious. I like that. He's a religious person. I like that. I like religious people. It usually means they're more honest. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. I've had some real religious ones that did numbers on me, and I said, I'm going to get them someday. They got me by surprise, but it's usually good, okay, right? And his name is Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson. He has my complete and total endorsement. Stand up, Speaker. So, you know, but it is true. A lot of times they'll say, I wish Mike were tougher. He's tough. He's tough as anybody in the room, actually. But can't be tough when you have a majority of 3. And now, sadly, a little bit less than that. A little bit less than that, maybe. But you can't be Trump. You can't, I warned you. You know, you make 10 enemies, 20 enemies. That's the end of that, right? Everybody loves him. I would say there's one person he's given up on. I think he just gave up on this guy. He's so bad. He never votes for us. But no matter how good, he won't vote for us. There's a sickness there. You know, there's something wrong. You can have the greatest bill, the greatest for the country. Forget about for Republicans. Great, great, great for the country. I'm a no vote. We don't even bother calling him at 3 in the morning, do we? Huh? But I want to thank another guy who's as tough as they come, because he went through something that none of us have gone through. I went through a little shot, but I get that throbbing feeling every once in a while. But what he went through was incredible. And that Steve Scalise, he got hit hard. Where's Steve? Steve. He's a tough cookie. He was dead. I went to the hospital. His wife was crying so much. He was a mess. Oh, yeah, she loves you. That's the only thing I learned about Steve, that he has a wife who loves him. Because I've gone to hospitals where guys are in bad shape, and the wife couldn't care less. She's waiting. She's looking for the next guy. Who's the next guy down the pike? Who the hell is the next guy? He's died. I said, it's so bad. Oh, yeah. I had one where the dog died and the husband died at the same time. I said, it's so sad. Yes, I love this dog so much. She couldn't give it, and the guy left her a fortune. Can you imagine? He shouldn't have left her anything, but she was much more concerned. It's true. Oh, the dog was devastated. The husband. He was like an afterthought. Your wife loves you, Steve. She's a great wife. Another one who has a great wife, Jackie, is Tom Emmer, right? Look at you. You have a great wife, but you haven't been tested like these guys. You haven't. We don't want to test her, right? She's incredible. She's a strong, beautiful, great person. She's a great person. She actually liked me at the beginning when we were having little fights. We weren't even having fights. We just didn't know each other. We didn't know each other. And I heard he said something negative about me. He was sort of right about the subject, but you're not supposed to say ever, even though you're right. But Jackie was saying, I'm telling you, he's a great guy. He's good. He's going to be a great president, blah, blah, blah. She was fighting for me. And now I love this guy. He's great. She was right about both of us, I think, right? But Tom has been incredible. He's incredible at what he does. And he's a great team player. Your conference chair, Lisa McLean, is so strong and powerful and beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you. And I think their broadcast, we said we don't care if the press comes or not. So when I say that, that means that they're broadcasting all this. And I'm letting my feelings out because it's true. I feel that way about so many people in the room. I could say it about many of the people in the room. Some I don't know as well, but many of the people in the room. They're incredible people. You're incredible what you're doing. We also have another one, Richard Hudson, chairman, NRCC. Richard's always in there, always with a smile. No matter what's happening, Richard, he always has a smile. He's just a positive guy, smart and positive. Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate it. You do a great job. Republican Policy Committee Chairman Kevin Hern. Kevin, where are you, Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Did a great job. Every one of you got to be proud of yourselves. And basically the entire House Republican Conference. It's been really amazing what you've done. And we're going to give you some ammunition today. I said, I'd love to make a speech. The Speaker asked me, would you make a speech? I said, sure. You think Biden would do that? Would you make a speech? What? First of all, people wouldn't ask him to make a speech because it never worked out well, right? Could never find the exits. You finish, look, stare here, stare there, stare here. You could jump off the front if you had to. No matter what he did, he got himself into trouble. So basically, they didn't ask him to, but if he did, it wouldn't be good. But it's good with me because, we have so much ammunition. We have ammunition. The problem is the fake news. That's why I like being on. I'd much rather do live television than do non-live because, when they say, as an example in my speech, peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol, peacefully and patriotically. Do you know that the Unselect Committee didn't report it, that I said those words? Do you know that the news never reported the words walk or march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol? Do you know they never reported it? It's a scandal. The Unselect Committee never reported that. They never reported that Nancy Pelosi was offered 10,000 soldiers, National Guard soldiers, whatever you want. No, I don't want them. And the mayor. The mayors weren't writing. She was more honorable about it. But Nancy got caught when her daughter did a documentary. She's a documentariist. And she has her mother saying, it's my fault. I should have taken the soldiers or something. I saw that in the documentary. I said, whoa, this was a major story. Has she spoken to her daughter since that, But they just, they are vicious people, even on the attack. And it was an amazing military feat that took place yesterday. Think of it. An amazing military. The people are saying, well, thank you. People are saying it goes down with one of the most incredible. It was so complex. 152 airplanes, many, talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many killed. And they knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. You know, our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and you're not protected, and they were. But it was so brilliant. The electricity for almost the entire country was, boom, turned off. That's when they knew there was a problem. There was no electricity. Caracas said, there's no electricity. It's not a... The only people with lights were the people that had candles. It was just off. So we sort of got them a little by surprise. But it was brilliant tactically. It was an incredible thing. But I watched where Schumer, he's such a bad guy. I mean, I've known the guy for a long time, and he's such a bad guy. You know, at some point they should say, you know, you did a great job. Thank you. Congratulations. Wouldn't it be good? I would say that if they did a good job. Their philosophies are so different. But if they did a good job, I'd be happy for the country. They've been after this guy for years and years and years. And, you know, he's a violent guy. He gets up there and he tries to imitate my dance a little bit. But he's a violent guy. And he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they're closing up. But he's tortured people. And now what they do, the radical left, they actually have people, and it's hard to get them. They're all paid people. Most of these people are paid. You know they're paid when they have brand new, beautiful printed signs by like the highest quality printer. And you have a woman, free Maduro. And the sign is before we even did the attack. You know, free Maduro. Why do you want him freed? I don't know, but he should be free. Oh, she reads a sign. So what does that say? It says free. Well, that's what I believe. And, you know, you see the sign. It's like, Lisa, we should all have quality signage like that. The one thing I want their sign maker. The guy is great. He does beautiful signage. You know, the old days was better when they used to write out their own sign, wasn't it? They'd make a sign in the basement. They'd have an old broken board holding up a sign, and it's made with a magic marker, sloppy as hell, and it meant something. But today, when you have that yellow and black, they should use different colors a little bit. But the yellow is a beautiful shade of yellow. No, I want to find out who that is. I want him to work for the Republican campaign. He's much better than our guy, whoever the guy is. But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody. We don't want to have it. We don't have a discussion, but you read all and you see everything else. Nobody could have done that. Nobody has our weapons. Nobody has the quality of our weapons. The problem is we don't produce them fast enough. We're going to start producing them much faster. We're going to be very tough on the companies. We have the best weapons in the world, but it takes too long to get them, including allies. When allies want to buy them, they have to wait 4 years for a plane, 5 years for a helicopter. We're not letting that happen anymore. We're telling our defense contractors, you're going to start building faster. You know, guy makes... I have a big problem with it. I'm the king. I have sold more Boeings than any human being on earth. They gave me an award, Salesman of the Year. I said, what about Salesman of the in the history of Boeing? I've sold more Boeing planes than any man in history by far, probably over 1,000. Over 1,000 planes. I said, that's the good news. But why should they wait 3-4 years to get a plane? They should build them, get them immediately. The F-35s, it takes too long to get them. The Apache helicopter. I mean, I had India coming to me, sir, I've been waiting 5 years. We're changing it. We're changing it. India ordered 68 Apaches, and Prime Minister Modi came to see me. Sir, may I see you, please? Yes. I have a very good relationship with him. He's not that happy with me because, you know, they're paying a lot of tariffs now because they're not doing the oil, but they are. They've now reduced it very substantially, as you know, from Russia. We're getting rich because of tariffs, by the way. I hope everyone understands that. They hate to report. We're going to have over $650 billion poured into our country or coming in shortly because of tariffs. You know, they're finding all of these pockets of money. A couple of weeks ago, sir, we're off by $39 billion. Oh, is that good or bad? Meaning, do we have it or are we short of it? Sir, it's $39 billion that we can't account for. That means we have an extra 39. Yes, sir. I said, well, what are you saying? We just don't know where it came from. I said, check the tariff shelf. Sir, that tariff doesn't start until September. He said, no. It started about a month and a half ago. Check it. Comes back 25 minutes later. Sir, you were right. It came from tariffs. This never happened to us before, where we find plus 39 billion, not million, plus 39 billion. They were missing. We've taken in $650 billion or shortcoming, and that's because I'm being nice. If I want to be, and we have national security because of tariffs. And frankly, we have a big Supreme Court case. I hope they do what's good for our country. I hope they do the right thing. The president has to be able to wheel and deal with tariffs. Now, if you have the right president, it's good. You have the wrong president, if you have the wrong president, nothing's good. Tariffs are the least of your problems. We found that out for 4 years. We had the worst president, did the worst job. They had the worst policy. We have to even run against these people. Now, I won't say cancel the election. They should cancel the election because the fake news will say, he wants the elections canceled. He's a dictator. They always call me a dictator. Nobody's worse than Obama and the people that surrounded Biden. Not Biden. I don't think it was Biden. He didn't know what the hell was going on, okay? The election was rigged. He had no idea what happened. He still doesn't. The auto pen. And by the way, you ought to make a big deal out of the auto pen. The auto pen was your president. Because most of the things were signed by auto pen. And you're not allowed to do that. I signed very little. Now I just sign everything because it's just so crazy. But, like I had the other day, we elevated a general to 4 stars. I think you should sign that. That's a big deal. A general did a great job, was elevated to 4 stars. And I had the general in, and I signed it in front of him, held it up. You got to sign that. You can't give it to an auto pen. And you can always tell an auto pen. One thing, it has 2 little tiny dots. You know that? 2 little dots. You know what that's from? 2 pins. They go bing, bing. They're wonderful things. But you got to sign it. And the law is you have to sign it. If somebody's, telling the auto pen person, he has to be authorized by the president of the United States. Well, he wasn't. The guy barely knew the president. How many times did you speak to the president, right? He said 2. And they just spoke about the weather. It was like this. But he was never authorized to sign. And I think 95% of the things were signed by AutoPen. You can tell because the AutoPen is a nice, clean signature, and his signature's a mess. The only thing he signed was, which is nice, was Hunter's pardon. That's the only thing that we can find that he signed. Most of it he didn't sign. So somebody's sending papers to sign. And he wasn't the president. First of all, the election was rigged. You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. Can you imagine? In California, they not only don't have voter ID, but if an official at the voting booths, which they don't have, by the way, because it's all mail, if an official, a voting official, even asks somebody for voter ID, sir, would like to see your identification. Do you come from our country? They put him in jail for tampering with the election. Okay? We got to straighten this out before it gets too crazy. California is more corrupt than any place. California is more corrupt than Minnesota. And I won Minnesota. Well, Tom's going, I think so. Well, it's close. It can't be proportionately, probably nothing's more corrupt, right? Yeah, right. He says you got to win. I'll tell you what, I did great there 3 times. I was surprised 3 times that those elections are corrupt. They got you 1 time, too. But I heard a long time ago, but they got you. But they got to straighten those out. But we have to have voter ID. And, when you confront a Democrat about voter ID, like in a debate or something, I said it a couple of times with Biden, and it's just one. They're very embarrassed when they say, we want voter ID, voter identification. The only reason somebody doesn't want that is because they want to cheat. Our elections are crooked as hell. And you can not only win elections over that, and not only win future elections, but you'll win every debate because the public is really angry about it. And you ought to pass the SAFE Act, or whatever you're going to call it. Are we going to SAVE Act or the Save America Act? I think we're going to change the name a little bit. You're going to put that up for a vote? I think everybody in this room certainly should do it. And it's a bad vote for them because they're voting against things like voter ID and other things that are almost equal to voter ID. But when somebody says, no, we don't want voter ID, that means they're crooked. And the public understands it. You win elections with that. But I think it would be really important, Save America Act, if you would put that up for a vote. It's got my total endorsement. And all it is common sense things about the election. And they'll fight it like crazy because they cheat. That's the only way they can win. When you have policy so bad, when you have policy with men and women's sports, and they fight like hell for it. They still are. I saw the other day a person that you know very well, a congressman, was fighting like hell. And, you know, I was out the other day with somebody, and I was with an ex-football player. The guy was massive. His leg was like this. And a young woman who plays flag football, and she's very good, supposedly, as an athlete. She's smaller than this guy's leg, okay? And if they were playing football together, he wouldn't even have to run. He could just keep walking. They couldn't take him down. You know, the guy, he can't even believe it. But there are so many. They had a race, a long-distance race. They had champion men, women, you know, one of those marathon deals. The man finished 5 hours and 14 minutes and 36 seconds sooner. He beat the champion woman by 5 hours. It's so demeaning to women. It's so ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous. The weightlifting, take a look at the weightlifting records. One record stood for 18 years, and it was broken by 112 pounds. They couldn't get 1/8 of an ounce, you know? They'd put 1/8 of an ounce on. Then she's going to break the record for her mom, who's sitting in the front with her father. I'm going to break it. And she's out there. We're adding 1/8 of an ounce to each side. This record has stood, ladies and gentlemen, for 18 years. But she's going to do it. She's looking to get into the Olympics, right? And she gets up, and they put a little tiny thing like this, little thing. And my wife, by the way, my wife hates when I do this. She said, you know, she's a very classy person, right? She said, it's so unpresidential. I said, but I did become president. You know, she hates when I dance. I said, everybody wants me to dance. Darling, it's not presidential. She actually said, could you imagine FDR dancing? She said that to me. And I said, there's a long history that perhaps she doesn't know. Because he was an elegant fellow, even as a Democrat, right? He was the attack by Japan, you know, he was quite elegant. But he wouldn't be doing this. But nor would too many others. But she says, darling, please, the weightlifting is terrible. And I have to say this, the dancing they really like. She said, they don't like it, they're just being nice to you. I said, that's not right. The place goes crazy. They're screaming, dance, please. But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, yeah. But she gets it, and drops the thing, walks off the stage crying. Her mother's crying, her father's crying. Guy gets up. They said, have you lifted before? A little bit. And he walks up, bing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding. I think it was 112 pounds, right? It's crazy. Or the beautiful boxer, they have boxing now, and that they have a young gentleman who transitioned, who's a very good boxer, but he wanted to be a woman, which is, you know, to each his own. Because I want to be very liberal when it comes to these subjects. I'm trying to get that vote. It's not an easy vote to get. It's very tough for me to get it. But he transitioned, and he transitioned. And the girl was a champion boxer from Italy, remember? She got up, first round. He hit her, boom, with a left. A left, for those, everybody here knows about. But a left, Lisa knows better than anybody. But a left is defense. He goes, boom. She's like, oh my. She walked to the corner, remember? She didn't go down, but she did everything else. But she said, I've never been hit like that before. I don't want to go out again. You can do it. You can do it. Bang. She walked off. She said, he happened to win the gold medal, that young woman. He won the gold medal. There were two transition people. They both won gold medals. The whole thing is ridiculous. You have policy on your side. They don't have policy on your side. Right? You have policy. And I saw this guy fighting like hell. The swimming records is ridiculous when you look at the swimming, any records. It's crazy. And it's so demeaning to women. Women are and for a long time, they refused to talk about it. They were embarrassed to talk about it. Now they do talk about it. They talk about it openly. But they have the worst policy on everything, open borders. We want open borders. They still want an open border. We did the greatest job ever on borders. And, I think they forgot it. My guy said to me today, I have a great guy, Ross. He's the greatest speechwriter. He said, sir, let's not mention the border. Nobody cares about the border anymore. Can you believe it? This was the biggest, this was the biggest thing there was. It says to me, nobody cares about the border because it has a shelf life. I fixed the border. I fixed it in my first term, but now I really had to fix it. It was much worse, when I came into office. Millions and millions of people were pouring into our country. And I fixed it. And my guy, who's incredible, says, people don't want to hear it, sir. You've done that. The problem is people forget that I did it. They totally forget. They were talking about the other day, we don't like Donald Trump on this. We don't like Donald Trump on that. And somebody just out of the blue said, well, he did an unbelievable job. Who cares about that? They're saying, that's been done. What do we do about that, Mike? Everything you do. It's almost like, what have you done lately is the way you have to run your life. In other words, I could have the most unbelievable 4 years, and I guess I'm not allowed to run. I'm not sure. Is there a little something out there that I'm not allowed to run? But let's assume I was allowed to run. I could have, there's going to be a constitutional movement. No, I could have the most unbelievable 4 years. Everything was great, but in the last week, I made a little slip up in something, and you lose the election. It's like, so we can't let them forget that we did such a great job on the border. By the way, Venezuela, everyone, they're marching in the streets. They love it, except in New York. I mean, where they find these people? These people, they're not these people are a mess. I know it's not nice to say that. These people are a mess. Where do they find these people? They're the worst looking people I've ever seen. They got hats that are all frayed and all, they look like, they're all paid. They don't even know what they're talking. When the reporters don't interview them because they know that it's, the press is so anti. It's hard to believe the press can be so anti because it's all common sense. It's not, we're conservative, whatever. Doesn't matter. We're all common sense people. It's not even conservative. It's common sense. But the press has no credibility whatsoever. Think of it. I got 97% bad stories on one network, 93% on the other, and I won in a landslide. You know what that means? The press has no credibility. That's all it means. And we got to keep it that way. So I don't talk too much about the swimming, the weightlifting, the boxing. I don't talk about it. You know why? I want to start bringing it up about a week before the election because I don't want them to correct themselves. I don't want them to say, we've decided that we don't want to have men playing in women's sports. That'd be a devastating blow for us. Because that's, they say it's an 80-20. No. It's about a 98-2 issue. We've decided that we will not have Open borders where the entire world, from the Congo, prisons from the Congo, these are extraordinarily tough people. These are people that make our motorcycle gangs look like fine young men. Okay? Our motorcycle gangs are wonderful people by comparison. No, they come in from prisons in the Congo. They come in from prisons from all over the world, but in particular Venezuela. Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua comes in, and Tren de Aragua, they say it's the worst gang in the world. It makes our gangs look like little sweethearts. It makes our gangs, you want to take them out to dinner, they're so nice. They cut off the fingers of people. One guy makes a phone call in Colorado. The governor stinks in Colorado. He's no control. So Tren de Aragua, they don't want to do anything about it. So ICE has to go in and take them out because the governor doesn't want to do anything. But they make a phone call. They've taken over my building. The landlord's calling. They took over his building. So the governor doesn't want to do anything. But he calls the police, the guy. They come in. Did you call the police? This is Tren de Aragua talking to the man that owns the building. Did you call the police? Yeah. Boom, they cut off his fingers. If you call him again, the next time your hand comes off. Can you believe it? The guy's walking around, his fingers were cut off. And these are the animals that we're throwing the hell out of here. Washington, D.C. is now the safest city in the country. And you people know that better than anybody because you were, I mean, think of it. You're in Congress, you're respected people, you're afraid to walk outside. Washington, D.C. Now, we had a terror attack 4 weeks ago, and one person's looking down from heaven, and the other one is actually recuperating and going to make it, I think, but really badly hurt. Really badly hurt. Most positive mother I've ever. No, my son's going to be fine, sir. The mother was telling me that the night of the attack, I went just like I went to you. I spoke to this incredible woman. Sir, everyone's praying for my son. He's going to be fine. The doctors thought she was, just hoping against hope. There was no chance. And 2 weeks ago, he got up and started walking around. It's amazing, actually. So maybe some really bad. It looks like he could be okay. He's going to have pretty bad after effects. But that was a terrorist attack on people that are doing a great job. And it could have been anywhere. But we haven't had a murder. We would have, on average, 2 murders a week in Washington. I don't even like talking about it. Two murders a week in Washington, D.C. We haven't had one in 7 months. People can walk out now. You can walk down with your wife down to the restaurants, which are booming, by the way. I mean, if you go back to before I got in, and we did a pretty good job 4 years ago, but there was never this, in my first term. So when we were during the first term, we were pretty good, but, it wasn't like that big of an issue. It became a big issue because people were being mugged all over the place. We had a couple of people working in the White House that were killed. We had one guy waiting for his wife in a car. They said, "Get out of your car." He said, "Well, I'm waiting for my wife." They blew his head off. The wife is walking up to the car. Animals. And then they get angry when I say, "They're animals." Nancy Pelosi, "They're not animals, they're human beings." No, they're not. This is another thing. That's a 98-2 issue also. No, they're animals, and we've taken them out. We've took out over 2,000 people, brought them back to their countries from where they came, or they're in prison now in Washington. Because it's not just like, you have to take the bad ones out. 2%, 3% of the population causes 90% of the crime. Think of it. 2% of the population in Washington, D.C. causes 90% of the crime. So when you get rid of the 2%, we took out over 2,000 people, got them out of the country or in prison. Some were so bad that we didn't want to send them back to their countries because they'll come back in, even though it's hard now, but, they're pretty smart. They're sick, but they're smart. But you're now living in one of the safest cities in the country. It's a great thing. You can walk to the restaurants. Restaurants are booming. New restaurants are open. They were all closing. You wouldn't have had a restaurant. And I don't know about you, but to me, those soldiers standing there look so good. I'm not going to feel safe walking down the street without them. I don't think you would either. Even though, we took out so many criminals, I just feel better. To me, they're beautiful. I look at these soldiers, and you feel safe. you feel safe. I don't think if we took them out, even if the crime wasn't much, it would definitely be more. We did a great job in Chicago. They don't want to talk about it. We, against all this slob of a governor, this stupid slob, who's the family threw him out of the business. He was a dope, and the Pritzker family, but they threw him out of the business. And the mayor, he's a low IQ person, extremely low IQ. We should give everybody like these competency tests, right? The cognitive, they call it cognitive. I'm the only president that went for cognitive. I think every president and vice president should be forced to take cognitive exams, mental tests, like, are they intelligent? Wouldn't it be nice? Do you think Walz could pass a cognitive test, as an example? Do you think Kamala could? I don't think Gavin could. He's got a good line of crap, but other than that, he couldn't pass. I mean, here's a guy who didn't want to have water coming down from the Pacific Northwest. Why? They have a little tiny fish, this big. It's a little tiny fish. Not doing well. You know why? No water. They're sending water. It's too much. It's killing the fish, so they cut it off. And then they have 25,000 houses burned down. They don't know why. No, I think, I believe in it. I'm the only one that took a cognitive test. I do, it's the worst. If I don't do a medical exam, because I've had times where I went longer, because I'm busy. If I don't do a medical exam, they say, Trump's not doing an exam. There must be something wrong with him. If I do the exam, they say, why did he do this? Why did he do this part of an exam? He did too much. There's something wrong with him. Do you remember there was a period, Mike, where I had 32 days in a row. I did one press conference, 2, 3, sometimes 4. I do them behind the desk. I don't even just do it. I do press conferences. But I do many press conferences. So in 32 days, and then one day, just one day. This is 32 days in a row. Must be some kind of a crazy record. Then one day, do you remember I didn't do one? Because I took Kai, my very brilliant golfer, beautiful young lady who swings the club so beautifully. She's a great scratch golfer and loves playing. Grandpa, would you take me to play golf? So I ran, I play golf in record. I play speed golf. It's better that way. You know the expression? Miss it quick. No, I play speed golf. But I'm a good golfer. Everybody knows. Anybody that I've beaten in this group. But I love to play golf, but I don't get to play much. But I took off 2 hours, and the press couldn't find me. But they knew I was there because they follow me. And I was getting, are you okay? Guys are calling me up. Some of the guys in this room. Sir, are you okay? Yeah, what's the problem? There's a report, sir, that you're no longer with us. Remember that? No. The report was that I don't want to use the D word. It's such a horrible word. Dead. I don't like. There's a report, sir, that you're no longer with us. I said, well, I just hit a 280-yard drive. This isn't bad. And, it's one of the, and it took me a couple of weeks to get that one straightened out. The new one is they did a report in the fake news New York Times where I worked this day from early in the morning till late in the evening, but we don't give out a full schedule. It's like who the hell wants to give out a schedule to these people? But it's all work. And this, in particular, this day was brutal. I never got to leave the seat. You couldn't do anything. It was just one after another after another. And this went on from early in the morning till late in the evening. And my people gave out a report. He had lunch. They show a report, lunch with somebody. And they did a story. Donald Trump is slowing down. He only had lunch. And then he went back up. And they said, that's malfeasance, whoever did, right? No, it's terrible. I was actually more angry with my people than I was with the New York Times. But they wrote a story, and it takes you a period of time to recover from these hits. And it's almost no matter what you do, but You have to keep a positive eye, but we have a fake press. We did a thing that's so incredible on medicine that nobody has ever done it. Reducing favored nations, most favored nations, we reduced the cost of medicine at levels that have never even been dreamt of before. We should win the elections on just that thing if we did nothing else and went home, go home. We did favored nations where we're bringing down the price of a pill. As an example, in London, the pill sells for $10. In New York, it sells for $130. That's 13 times as much. Most favored is I want to pay what the lowest nation in the world is paying. Everybody knew about it, but nobody had the guts or the stamina to do it or the respect from other nations, but I do. And then you also had to get the drug companies. The drug companies were not easy, but they were much easier compared to the other nations. So the other nations used to tell the drug companies, we're not going to pay more. You kept it for years, the same price. Everything, we just kept going up, up, up. And finally, I had the drug companies, and I said, listen, fellas, you can't do this. Can't do it anymore. I'm not going to let it. We're going to do it, and you're not going to do it. And I did things to them that were brutal, but I really found out it was the nations that were so tough. So when France was told that the pill will go from $10 to $30, it's a big increase, right? But it's not really. And that ours would come down from $12 or $13 down to $30. So theirs would go from 10 to 20 or 30, and ours would go from $13 down to, meaning $130 down to 20 or 30. So it's a huge drop for us. Now, depending on the way you calculate it, it could be thousands of percent down. It could also be 90% and 80%. You know, there's two ways of calculating. I don't know if you know. They said Donald Trump exaggerated. Now, there are two ways of calculating it. But calculate it at 80, 90%. But the other way is more accurate, like 900%, because that's what it really is. But there are two ways, but use, to be generous, 90%. There hasn't been a reduction in 28 years, except for the 1 year where I got it down 1/4%, and I had a news conference. I was so proud of myself. The drug prices, prescription drugs, are going to be down by thousands of points, thousands. On that one item, you should win this election. The New York Times barely wrote about it. The other papers barely wrote about it. Nobody even knows that the drug prices. Now, people will say, you don't mind if I don't read this crazy teleprompter, do you? Because, do you mind? Because I have, it's called standard. But these things are so important because you guys got to get elected. Because if you don't get elected, we have a country that's going to go to hell. So we can't play games. Ladies and gentlemen, the sun will rise tomorrow, and when it rises, we don't need this bullshit. We need to talk about favored nations. And your numbers are coming down at levels that nobody's ever seen. We inherited high prices. We inherited a mess. We inherited the greatest inflation in history. And you know what was knocking it down? The bad economy that we inherited. We inherited bad. We now have the hottest economy in the history of our country. We have $18 trillion being invested in the United States. You have, every one of you have car plants, AI plants, plants of all different types. Because of tariffs. I hope we get the good ruling from the Supreme Court. I only hope we do, because it's given us tremendous national security. So let me just finish up, because I weave. I love to weave. If you ever weave and don't come back to the point, then that's a problem. Then you say, but when you weave and you go here and boom, 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 always coming back, then you're in good shape. But what's happening is by doing what I did, we're getting numbers that are so low. But what did I do to the countries? I said, France, your health care for prescription drugs is going to go up triple. It's going from $10 a pill, just as an example. I called it the fat drug. You could say the fat drug, Ozempic. Ozempic is $80 in London, and it's $1,300 in New York. The fat drug. A friend of mine called me up. He said, what the hell is going on? A very rich guy, but I said, the fat drug doesn't work on you. Why are you even taking it? The drug has failed miserably, but he's a very loud, boisterous. He's not a bad guy, not a great guy. Smart as hell. But he's a very rich guy. This drug, he could have paid millions for it. It wouldn't have mattered. But he said, in London, I'm paying $80. In New York, I'm paying like many times more than that. What the hell is that? That's because of what's happened. Because the nations held us back. So the drug companies, I made a deal with them. You're going to do it? They said, whatever the nations agreed to. The nations were a bigger problem than the drug companies. So I said, you tell me they'll never agree, sir. I said, 100% they will. 100%. They said, sir, the smartest guy, Eli Lilly, Merck, Pfizer, all genius. They're all making numbers you wouldn't believe. The defense contractors are making more. That's why I'm going to say, you're making $45 million a year and you can't produce a frickin' helicopter for 7 years? We're going to talk to them about that. But I said to the France, I called up, as an example, France, just as an example, I like him, he's a nice guy. Emmanuel, you know Emmanuel Macron. I love the French accent. Emmanuel. They said, listen, you're going to have to raise your prices a little bit because we're paying 14 times more than you. That's a lot, right? We're paying numbers. In other words, we're making up for all of this deficit. No, Donald, I will not be able to. Mr. President, please excuse me. Most of the people call me Mr. President, except for people that don't respect me, they call me Donald, which are probably a lot of them too. But they said, no. Putin calls me Mr. President. She calls me Mr. President. Emmanuel goes, no. We will not do that. Yes, you will, Emmanuel, 100%, because I was told they wouldn't do it. And this is, you can take Emmanuel and add up Hans, you can add up Ludwig, you can add every name in the book. It's all the same. The answer is no. We're not going to double our drug prices. Not for you or anybody else. I said, yes, you are, 100%. We are not going to do it. No, you don't understand. 100%. You're going to do it and you're going to like it. They go, I don't understand. I've told you 5 times, why do you keep saying you're going to do it? Because I'm always right about, Trump is right about everything, right? I said, the hat. Trump is right about it. I have been right about everything. Got to keep it going. Is there wood up here? Hold it. I always like to, just in case. Trump was right about everything. And I said, so you're going to do it, Emmanuel? No, I'm not. I said, okay, here's the story, Emmanuel. If on Monday you haven't agreed to every single thing that we want, I'm putting a 25% tariff on everything coming out of France, including your wines, your champagnes, and everything else. No, you cannot do that. I said, I can do that, and I will do that. Even for national security, I'll do that. But this is for medical security. And 100%. Now, let me explain. The tariff I'm imposing on you is 42 times more expensive than what I'm asking for you in return. So you can either have a 25% tariff added on to you, like I did with China on fentanyl. I put a 20% penalty tax on China, and it's drying up because the tax is far more than they make with fentanyl. But with the other nations, I said, you're going to do it. And you know what he said? You can't do that to me. I said, yes, I can. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be that bad. You just have to explain it to your people, your 39 million people, that, by the way, don't vote by mail. They vote on paper ballots. They tried voting by mail, and there was fraud all over the country. We're the only country that votes by mail, essentially. You know that, right? You know, Speaker, that's another thing. We're the only country that's stupid enough to vote by mail. Even Jimmy Carter's commission said, don't do it. But just to finish so that you won't say he wanders. Emmanuel said to me, Donald, you have a deal. I would love to increase my prescription drug prices by 200% or whatever. I would love to do it. It would be such an honor. Whatever you want, Donald, please. Don't tell the population. Please, Donald, I beg you. Every country said the same thing. No, 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 we will not do this. Some were strong, some were very nice, some were rude. But they all said one thing, no, we won't. And within, I'd say on average, 3.2 minutes, they were all saying, we would be honored to quadruple our drug prices. So we would be honored to quadruple our prices if that's what you like. We want to make you happy. Okay. Therefore, I will not charge you a tariff, and you're going to increase your drug prices by 3 times what they were paying 2 days ago, right? And we have now favored nation. You think Biden could do that? I don't think so. Think Biden ever thought of it? Now, everybody's wanted favored nations, but everybody knew it was impossible to get the countries to agree to it because they wouldn't have done. And they've been doing this for 40 years or whatever it is. We were subsidizing the entire world. That's just one of the many things we're giving. But you should take that thing. That's going to save. Now, that also, when you add that to healthcare, your drug prices are much lower than what you projected. So we're going to reduce healthcare by a lot. One other thing. On healthcare, it's never been our issue. It should be our issue. We had a very nasty vote from a couple of people. I guess Collins, I guess Lisa Murkowski, and I guess a man named John McCain. Remember? Thumbs down. You remember. He said, I'm all for 10 years he campaigned. I don't want to be nasty, but for 10 years he campaigned on Obamacare. We're going to destroy Obamacare. We're not going to do it. And then we're going to terminate it. And then, it was a little surprising. We could have had health care, good health care. Obamacare is bad. And the people understand it's bad. And the premiums are horrible. But one thing I've learned a lot about healthcare. I found healthcare sort of like not of tremendous interest, but it was very important. And I made it of tremendous interest. So I made a statement a couple of months ago because I saw the numbers. I said, boy, because, I like to see what's going on. That's one of the reasons. By the way, we set an all-time record again today. We have the highest stock market in the history of our country by far, every single month. That's another thing you should camp. They like to demean that. The Democrats, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's just, no. That means jobs, and it means 401ks, because a lot of people have 401ks. And they have, best lawyer in the room, the best, have 401ks, and they have 401ks like, I had a young policeman. I told this story twice, but it was the same thing. This was a recent case. I had a case years ago because I had a great economy. We had the greatest economy in history during my first term. My first term was a tremendous success. But again, nobody wants to talk about that. We rebuilt our military. We did things that nobody could have done. We did a great job. This term is blowing it away. It's blowing every term. There's never been a president that had a year like this, especially a starting year. And we should win based on that too, all things. But the 401k, so there's a policeman, and he comes up, and he was guarding me along with lots of other people. Sir, I want to thank you. What? My wife thinks I am the worst investor in the world. And for the last year, she thinks now I'm Warren Buffett. She said, you're smarter than Warren Buffett. You're a better investor than Mr. Warren Buffett, sir. I said, how's your 401k? It's doubled. It's going up. It's going up. I said, just relax. But 401ks are through the roof. Those are us. Those are the people. We have the highest stock market in history. 47 days out of 11 months. We have just a piece of the last month left for the first year. 47 days out of 11 months, we hit a new record. Well, we hit one last night. We hit another one today, I understand. But we hit one last night, a new record, brand new record. All exchanges, not just, Dow. Dow was up, but all of them. We have another record, that's the 47th time in 11 months that we've hit an all-time high. And the future, because we have more money coming into our country than any country has ever had by far. The record was about $3 trillion many years ago by China. We've got $18 trillion pouring into our country. You know why? Because of tariffs. Because if they build a factory, they don't have to pay any tariff. But if they make it in another country and they send it in, they have a very big tariff to pay. So they can't pay that tariff. So what they do is they come in and they're building. By the way, this is what China did to us for many years. It's just reversing it. Other than we have a great product. We were losing our product now. Tell you what, if I had lost this election, if you had Kamala, it's the same thing, Joe and Kamala, I call them equals. If you had Kamala come in, I believe that our country would have been Venezuela on steroids. I used to say that during the campaign. If I don't win, we're going to have Venezuela. So we have 18 trillion coming in. I think we could hit 20 trillion by the time the year is up, right? It's less than 1 year, 18 trillion. The record is $3 trillion. $3 trillion is a lot of money. 18 trillion is not even thinkable. That's all investment. That's building factories. That's building plants. You know how many car factories we have? Half of you guys are having car factories. Where you are, Louisiana is doing great. Georgia, right next to you, is doing great. Hello. Nice guy. All nice people. Actually, in this room, I can't see it. Is there anybody I'm supposed to dislike in this room? I think that a couple of people maybe didn't show up. There's only one that I really dislike. I mean, the same person that Mike gave up on, because there's something wrong with him. He's a sick person. But there's only one, really. The others, you just have to understand them. You know, they have some problems too. But you just have to sort of go with them and understand them, feel sorry for them. Advise their family, are they okay? Because what we're doing is right. But $18 trillion, car plants being built. I was in Japan. Somebody admonished me, he shouldn't be traveling. I don't like to travel. But when I travel, I make a lot of money for the country, not for me. For me, I don't care. I have a much higher purpose. I have plenty of money. I don't need money. I don't want money. I want to make money for the country. And like I did with Intel. Intel came in. They had a problem. I said, I can solve the problem, but I think you should give the United States 10% of your company. He goes, whoa. I said, yeah, I think I can help you with the problem, but you got to give the United States, not me. Sometimes I'll say, give me. But when I say me, I'm talking about, I'd love to accept it, but I don't think that law enforcement would like that, right? I'm very cognizant of law enforcement, perhaps more than anybody in history. Actually, a friend of mine who's really smart said, you know, you've got to be the most honest guy in history because you have been examined, your books, your records. I have a big business. Every record. I had these Democrats hired the biggest accounting firms, the biggest law firms, the biggest. I went through years of abuse. And here I am. They didn't find anything wrong. Remember? We want his tax returns for years. We want his... Finally, the Supreme Court, shockingly, I'm the only one. This couldn't happen to anybody else. You have to give your tax returns, right? I gave my tax returns. They're from here to here. It's a big business. It's a great business. And I built a great business, like much bigger and better than anyone even understands. But I gave my tax returns. They go from here to the ceiling practically. They got them. Headline, Trump to give tax returns. Supreme Court ruled I had to give my tax return. Can you believe it? Everyone said, you're not supposed to do that. And by fighting, they think you're trying to hide something. You know, naturally. I gave my tax returns. That's the last we ever heard. They hired the biggest accounting firm in the world, most powerful lawyers in the world. They spent millions and millions of dollars going over those returns. There hasn't been one story that I did anything wrong. So this friend of mine who's highly sophisticated, rich guy, smart guy, said there's nobody that I know that could have gone through an examination like that and not ended up in prison. Nobody ever had to suffer like I did. Nobody ever did that to anybody else. You know, there was an expression, Andrew Jackson was the most abused president in the history of the United States. You know who second was? This is before me. You know who second was? Abraham Lincoln. But he had a civil war, so we have to give him a pass. But Andrew Jackson was treated horribly. He was a great general and a good president. So bad that his wife died. I mean, his wife died. They were horrible. But I just saw a report came out the other day. I blow them away. He never got impeached twice. I got impeached twice or nothing. On a perfect phone call, remember? Perfect phone call. Tim Scott, who's a great guy, great, wonderful guy, South Carolina, straight guy, right? He is a good guy, good person. He's an honest person. He read a transcript. Thank goodness I had a transcript. Essentially, the call was taped because they tape calls. I didn't even know. So was that call taped? Yes, sir. I said, oh, well, bring it down. I don't even know. And we read the transcript. It was perfect. It was so good. I told Ukraine not to cheat. And if you see any cheating, report it to the Attorney General of the United States. That was my call. They said, he was trying to intimidate. All I said is, don't cheat. And we have a signed agreement that Ukraine can't cheat. You know that. It's the only country we have actually assigned. They violated the agreement many times, I would tell you. You'll find out. I was right about that, too. But nobody's gotten treated. But this guy said to me, for you to have escaped. But the one thing, and I'll just end it, because Jim Jordan back there, world champion wrestler, 128-1. Whatever happened to the one guy? The Russian. He lost to, how dare you lose to a Russian? Do you know the more impressive record for Jim? Because I'm a big sports person. I love sports. Jim went to high school. As in high school, he was considered like the top wrestler. But he was undefeated in high school. Now, what that means is that as a freshman, he was beating seniors. Is that true? Were you actually undefeated? Seriously, were you undefeated in high school? That means as a freshman, he had to beat seniors, Steve. Nobody could, because there's such a difference between a freshman and a senior. To me, that's more impressive than anything. But I'm also impressed with his fight. Now we have to close the deal, Jim. We got to close the deal. Close that deal. I respect. I saw Jim, and the first time I met Jim, I looked at him and I said, tough-looking guy. But I noticed the ears, they were a little rough. They were a little bit of a rough. Some people would say a little cauliflower on that ear. They said, Jim, have you wrestled before? Yes, I did. Where? Was it Ohio State? Something like, he was an All-American at Ohio State. I said, yeah, I could sort of tell. I look at the ears and I can sort of tell. But have you had plastic surgery on your ears, Jim? No? Because they look better now than they did the first time. They've healed over the years. They've healed. Actually, now you're wrestling with probably much tougher people, the radical left lunatics, right? But anyway, so I just want to leave it by this. I want to say that you are great people. We have all of the policy. We have wonderful. Just stay together. We got a few people that make life very difficult. They don't have that. I used to say they don't have a Mitt Romney in their midst. I mean, Mitt Romney was very difficult. You know, he was almost like for them. He was on the Senate side. But we have a couple of people that are really bad. I mean, they're bad, but maybe they'll straighten out. Maybe somebody in the room can sit them down and straighten them out, because what we're doing is the right thing for the country. We're not Republican or Democrat. We're doing the right thing for the country. If you look at what we're trying to solve the health care problem. We're trying to get better health care at a lower price. I mean, that's a good thing, right? And the one thing I learned, and just in concluding, and I said it like a month and a half ago, and it was the number one thing in the country, Even the fake news covered it. They tried to put a negative spin on it, of course. I said, I read a story about insurance companies making a fortune. A fortune. Their stocks were up 1,700%. Who invested recently in a stock that's up 17? And that's because the money that they're getting from Obamacare is massive. And the government generally. That means they're making a fortune. And as soon as that, because I'm like, I have a natural, I don't want to say it again, but I have a natural business instinct. I do. I've always done things. I've done some things that people said, you're crazy, and I made a lot of money with. I've done a lot of things that were good. I have an instinct, right? Somebody said, he's got the best political instincts of any politician in 150 years. I said, no, I don't. I really don't believe I do. I think I have good instincts. I have common sense. But they said that it was a very complimentary statement, but I don't believe that's necessarily right. But I do have good policy. I have good common sense. And maybe they wheeled that into instincts. And I did become president, so can't be that bad. And I never did it before. Don't forget, I ran for president. I had a politician telling me very strongly, they said, sir, I've run for office 20 times and I've won 17. And I know what I'm talking about. This was at the very beginning of my first time. I said, well, I've only run once and I won, but I won for president. He said, you got me on that one. He's actually sitting in this room right now, that son of a gun. He knows who I'm talking about. He was giving me a hard time, but he's turned out to be a decent person. Not the best in the room, but a decent person. He's not my favorite in the room, but he's decent. But we have one thing that's really strong. Uh-oh, it's a fake news. Pulitzer Prize, right, Doug? Pulitzer Prize. He got one for the bullet. He had the bullet, but he got how many Pulitzer Prizes? 3 Pulitzer Prizes, and all talented guys. These are great guys. I don't like the people back there as well. These are the ones that take the pictures. Make me look thin for a change, Doug. You're making me look a little bit heavy. I'm not happy about it. But one thing I did see and find out in the last 2 months, when you tell the people that we want the money to be paid to the people so the people can buy their own health insurance and health care, it's like, and I just said it, and I said it because I read a story on the front page of a certain paper that I don't even mention because it's so stupid, paper, it's so bad, it's gone so far off the Wall Street Journal, I don't mention it. I refuse to tell you that it's the Wall Street Journal. They've lost their way. This is not the Wall Street Journal of old. But I read a story on the Wall Street Journal, and it said that the insurance companies are making so much money. They weren't demeaning them or anything, and I guess as an investor, you're happy. When I read that, I said, wait a minute, they're making that kind of money, and they're making it because of stupid politicians, I hate to say, that we allow them to make it. If you guys can get in a room, because, we don't have that as one of our issues. It's the only thing they have. They're lousy at it. They came up with Obamacare. We tried to fight it. We almost had it won, but we didn't get 3 votes. We should have gotten them. But here's, you want to turn this thing, you work on favored nations, you work on borders, you work on all of the things that we talked about, but now you take the healthcare issue away from them, and they want to fight it. You know why? They're all owned by the insurance companies, and they cannot fight it successfully. There's nothing they can do. That's like almost the voter ID thing. When they try and fight, I watched a guy trying to explain why we shouldn't have voter ID the other day, and the guy was a fool. He looked like an idiot. This is the same kind of an issue. Let the money go in a healthcare account or however you do it. Let the money go directly to the people. Now, you have to be a little flexible on Hyde. You know that. You got to be a little flexible. You got to work something. You got to use ingenuity. You got to work. We're all big fans of everything, but you got to be flexible. You have to have flexibility. I came out with a statement. Let the money go not to the big fat cats and the insurance companies that made 1,700% over the last short period of time. Let the money go directly to the people where they can buy their own health care. And I'm not sure that I've ever said anything that was more impactful. You know, I say a lot of things and have a lot of good ideas. And this was an idea that, I mean, the whole world went crazy. The whole country went crazy. The world went crazy with envy. If you can somehow do that, Mr. Speaker, Tom, all of you, Steve, if you can do that, you're going to have, this is going to be your issue. And the other thing is fertilization. They're trying to hit us on fertilization. They were dead on fertilization when I got a call from a very wonderful young senator from Alabama saying they had just lost a case. And the case, I've never been met with such scorn. Friends of hers were just going crazy. And I said, explain the issue to me. And it was on IVF, the fertilization. A judge ruled against and said all fertilization places have to be closed down, like immediately. It would have been a disaster. And fortunately, I picked it up, and we owned the issue. But now I understand they're trying to make a case on fertilization. You can't let them do that. Very important issue. All of these issues are very important issues. But you can own healthcare. Figure it out. Let the money go directly to the people. It goes in a healthcare account. There are numerous things you can do. But you have to no money for the insurance companies. You know, I'm going to meet with the insurance companies. I said, I'm going to meet with them because I met with the prescription drug companies. And that's when I found out what was going on with the fact that we were paying 10 and 13 and 14 times more money than Europe and other places. I learned that at the meeting. Now I'm going to meet with them in a few days. I'm meeting with them all, 14 companies. I'm meeting with them all. I'm also meeting with oil companies. Let's go. You know what that's about. We've got a lot of oil to drill, which is going to bring down oil prices even further. But if you can come up with health care, remember this, where the money goes to the people, you have just owned, they can't fight it. They're owned by the insurance companies. You guys don't get money from the insurance companies. They do. They get a massive amount of money. It's their biggest donor. They're going to try and fight you, but they can't win the fight. If you explain it, the money goes directly to the people. That's going to be your issue. The other thing is energy. Your energy prices have come so far down since I'm president. And nobody wants to, I saw on television, energy prices are down 3%. No, they're not down 3%. They were $3.50 and $4. It's now $1.99 a gallon in many stations, and it's going down further. And that's like a massive tax cut. And that's the other thing, tax cuts. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Now think of this, no tax on tips, no tax for seniors on Social Security, no tax on overtime. You're allowed to deduct if you buy a car and you take out a loan on the car. For the first time ever, middle-income people, all people can deduct, but they never got a deduction before like this. It's only for rich people. They got them. They have so many deductions. You're allowed to deduct the interest against your taxes. Nobody thought it was possible. It's going to be phenomenal for the car companies, but it's even more phenomenal for the people. It's like getting it's like paying half for the car. All of these things, you have so much ammunition. All you have to do is sell it. Taxes. But the one thing they know about the taxes, I call it the great big beautiful bill. I think it's even better. But the great big beautiful bill is just that. There are so many goodies in the bill, you have to get the word out. Because the people in the back of the room won't do it. That's why I love live television. Because they can't, sometimes they'll turn the camera off. But they're embarrassed when they do that. If we're going too strong and doing too well, if the lights go off, you know you're doing well. If the lights are on, you got yourself a problem, okay? I see that little red light. That light goes on. If that light, that's bad, isn't it? If that light goes off, you know that you're doing a good job because You're fighting the Democrats and you're fighting the fake news. And it's amazing that they can be so stupid. And they don't have credibility anymore, and you can beat them. I mean, it's the old thing that, never fight the news, but you have no choice because it's almost like they become radicalized. But you are fighting the news, but you can beat them. That's why I'm standing here. I mean, I had Kamala. I was beating Joe by 30 points, and then they changed him. That's like a fighter in the ring. He's losing, and they say, let's put somebody else in to take his place. Very unfair. They changed in the middle of the election. They said, he's going to lose, so let's give somebody else. And fortunately, she was just as bad as him. Probably slightly. I don't know. Would you say as bad or worse? Close. Pretty close. But it took 6 weeks. It was a honeymoon period. 6 weeks. It took 6 weeks to find out that she didn't have what it takes. But you got to win the midterms. Because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached. We don't impeach them. You know why? Because they're meaner than we are. We should have impeached Joe Biden for 100 different things. They are mean and smart. But fortunately for you, they have horrible policy. They can be smart as can be. But when they want open borders, when they want, as I said, men and women's sports, when they want transgender for everyone, bring your kids in. We're going to change the sex of your child. Just send them our way. In some cases, like in Minnesota, they don't even tell the parents. Is that right? And nobody believes it when I say it. I think we have 6 states. Nobody, am I correct? Okay, Tom Emmer said yes, so. But it's true. Where the kid comes back, they keep the kid. They operate on the kid. They don't tell the parents. It's not believable. We have great, solid, common sense policy. They have horrendous policy. What they do is they stick together. They never have a no vote. They impeached me. I never knew I was going to be impeached. I get a phone call. You just got impeached. I said, what does that mean? It took them 10 minutes. They impeached the president of the United States, who did a damn good job. I rebuilt our military, Space Force. I got everything. I did a lot. They impeached me for nothing, twice, for nothing. Fortunately, you were on our side, and we were unanimous. And the second time, the few people in this little group, like Rice and this, they're all gone. Every one of them is gone, except one that we're going to sort of let ride with. Some guy that has a state that you might as well just let him ride. But think of it, everyone's gone. Everyone's gone. It makes me feel so good. I don't want to feel vicious. But I'm so happy that everyone. And they're seriously gone, too. They lost in landslides. This guy named Rice, he lost by 48 points. Right? Remember him? Oh, no, there he is. What a job you did, Mr. Fry. Congressman Fry. I looked around for somebody. It's true, this was a good choice. We've made some bad choices, too, because you have to do it. I said, who the hell can run against this guy, Rice? It was a Trump plus 40 district. They had riots around his house that night. He voted, I vote to impeach. And that night they had riots. So they said, who the hell? Just give me somebody. A warm body. And then, no, it has to be a living, breathing person. And then if I could get a genius, it would be good. And we got a guy who is so good. He's been, I think, are you happy with him? I think so. Stand up, bro. He's great. I said, where does he come from? He's like a senator, state senator or something. I said, all right. I spoke to him one time. I said, you're accepted. But little did I realize how good he was. You did a great job. You've done a great job, and the people love him. So he has done a great job. I just want to say this. I haven't read one word on this thing. Who the hell else could do this? And I think I gave you something. It's just a roadmap. And it's a roadmap to victory. You have so many good nuggets. You have to use them. If you can sell them, we're going to win. Because we've won 2 races in like 50 years. It's, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but just don't fight it. It doesn't make sense. There have been 2, and they were unusual circumstances. So whether it's a Republican or Democrat, whoever wins the presidency, the other party wins the midterm. And it doesn't make sense because we've had the most successful year probably in the history. They say, and now you add what happened essentially yesterday, we've had the most successful first year of any president in history. And it should be a positive. And make it a positive. So with that, I leave you. I do. And I started by saying I love you all, and I'll end by saying I love you. You're amazing people. What you do for this country is incredible. And thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the Martin Daubney Show. It is 4:35 p.m. You join us here live from the heart of Westminster. Donald Trump there speaking in Washington, D.C. to a room packed. There he is doing that renowned, infamous, trademark Donald Trump dance. He referred to that in an expansive speech of over 90 minutes. He told us that Melania Trump had told him to stop dancing. He said, "Are you crazy? People love my dancing." A speech which encompassed practically every topic on the planet, from Venezuela, the audacious kidnapping of the former president Maduro, military, the proud military, the most sophisticated military on the planet. He then launched into, I have to say, a rather passable impression of the French president Emmanuel Macron, resplendent with French accent. He said, "How I love the French accent." Joe Biden, of course, was spared no mercy. He had no idea what was going on. He still doesn't. He then did an impression of a trans weightlifter. He was talking about trans athletes in sports, how it was completely unacceptable. He talked about how the protesters outside in New York said everybody was happy in the world about Maduro being removed from power, apart from the people in New York. He said, where do they get these people? They're the ugliest people you can possibly find in their frayed hats, he went on. He talked about removing Venezuelan criminals from the country. He talked about how 90% of crime in DC was caused by 2% of the population. So we removed them. We deported them. 20,000 we deported or put in prison. He said there hasn't been a murder in DC in 7 months. We used to have 2 every week. He said there should be compulsory cognitive mental tests for all people in politics. Literally everything was on the table, and you can't turn off because, of course, at any moment, Donald Trump, the most unpredictable politician on the planet, perhaps in history, could have said literally anything. To recap, for the past 90 minutes, the US President Donald Trump has been speaking on a wide range of issues, including Venezuela and the might and the quality of the US military. Let's take a reminder of what Mr. Trump had to say.
But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody. We don't want to have it. We don't have a discussion, but you read all and you see everything else. Nobody could have done that. Nobody has our weapons. Nobody has the quality of our weapons.
And it has to be said, here is a president seemingly without a care in the world. He seems to be in extremely good mood, following, of course, the USA's mission to capture the former Venezuelan president. But this was one of Donald Trump's more unusual speeches.
Weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, yeah. But she gets it, and drop the thing.
Now, just to explain, that was the President of the United States, the most powerful person, perhaps at the moment, on the planet, doing an impression of a trans weightlifter. That was an impression of a biological man easily lifting a weight. As you can see, it was a rather expansive speech. And joining me in the studio, we watched the entire thing together, is GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, we sat here together watching something which I think was truly extraordinary. You can't turn off, because anything can happen. That's the nature of these speeches. You and I have sat through many, many Donald Trump press conferences. Expect the unexpected. Where to start? What leapt out at you?
I feel like we've fallen through the looking glass here, because here he was for well over an hour, very happy, making all sorts of jokes, some of them slightly inappropriate, but, you know, he is the ultimate showman, and he's always conscious of TV and what makes great TV. But there he is, without a care in the world, on top of the world, he seems, and yet America just a couple of days ago went into Venezuela, took their leader in handcuffs, have put him on trial, and now are threatening in a very direct way Greenland, part of Denmark for several hundred years, a NATO ally. And in Paris, we have dozens of European leaders meeting with Zelensky and US counterparts to talk about Ukraine, but having, I suspect, a bit of a collective nervous breakdown about what America's plans for Greenland and indeed the future of NATO and the whole of the sort of world as we know it in terms of the international order is all up in the air.
He was talking about Maduro as a violent guy. He killed millions of people. He tortured them. But the Free Maduro signs, he said, seemed to be printed before we even did the attack. The attack, he said, was mostly Cubans were killed. Some extra details came out. They knew we were coming. The electricity for the entire country, certainly for Caracas, went out. It was brilliant. The only people with lights in the country had candles. Talking here about the specific surgical nature of that attack. He then went on to detail how the only people that seem miserable about this are people in New York. He said, where do they find these people? They're so ugly with their frayed hats. He then said the press has no credibility. They're attacking me for this, but this is a 92-8 issue. He talks about the fact the press are obsessed with things that the American public don't care about. And Catherine, it struck you and I both watching that conference there, that meanwhile in Paris, we seem to have the so-called coalition of the willing with the weight upon their shoulders. Here's Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, without a care in the world.
Well, yes, and part of the reason that Europe has got the weight of the world on its shoulders is, frankly, because of Donald Trump, because we knew that the world changed when Russia invaded Ukraine. We had thought the days of war in Europe were gone. The peace dividend is well and truly over. When Donald Trump came in, we knew that there'd likely be tariffs. We knew that he might not be steadfast in support of Ukraine. He and America have done a lot to try to bring the war to a close. Let's face it, under Joe Biden, all we ever heard was we are with Ukraine for as long as it takes, but there was never any sort of move to try to end the war. So that has got to be positive. But Donald Trump has made it very clear that Europe hasn't paid its way, and we obviously haven't. We haven't felt that we needed to. We haven't spent what we should have spent on defence. And now here we are in a position where we are so reliant on US security guarantees for any lasting peace in Ukraine, assuming Putin ever agrees. But also we're in a position where, should the US decide to march into Greenland, as Steve Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff, has indicated, saying no one's going to fight the US militarily over the future of Greenland, America can already put as many troops as it wants into Greenland. They have a post-war agreement. They've got one military base there. They used to have about a dozen. They are also, Greenland is also open to deals on oil. So what is this about? Is this just that America wants that land for itself?
But it's worth mentioning that Greenland wasn't even mentioned in today's speech. It didn't even come up. And isn't it astonishing how in Paris they seem to be obsessing with this notion that Donald Trump is set to invade, take over, annex, call it what you want, wasn't even mentioned today by Donald Trump. He mentioned Emmanuel Macron, but only taking the mickey out of his accent, or talking about the fact he liked his accent. He didn't mention Keir Starmer at all. He only mentioned Britain once, and that was how cheap the fat jab is in Britain compared to America. American pharmaceutical companies ripping off the American public. What struck me was a man who's the epicenter of world power, the epicenter of the world's most powerful military, and seemingly doesn't give a toot, doesn't give a hoot about his so-called European allies. And isn't that sort of giving you a feeling, Catherine, that the sun is setting on Europe as a power and the new power is emerging and it's the United States, a true superpower.
Well, it's what Steve Miller said. The world is governed by strength, might and power. The days of us doing the right thing by our international allies. Donald Trump, America, is the most powerful country on earth, and he doesn't feel that the rules apply to him because, frankly, they don't. America is doing whatever it likes. And at the moment, there's really not much we can do. Donald Tusk, the Polish PM, has said the Europe has got to be united like never before, all for one and one for all, otherwise we are finished. Well, Europe does not have a strong track record of agreeing. Just look at the problems that the EU has to agree on anything.
OK, well, thank you very much for your reactions there, Catherine Forster. Coming up, more reactions to that extraordinary speech, that 90-minute speech from the US President Donald Trump. Plus, we'll be crossing to Paris to talk to our man Chopper at the Champs-Elysees at that coalition of the willing. Is it actually the coalition of the pointless? That's next on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The cold weather we're experiencing in the UK also affecting Spain at the moment. Warm winds, meanwhile, in Greece, but with some heavy rain ahead of an area of low pressure that is moving through parts of Italy. So wet for Italy, Croatia, much of Greece during Wednesday. Meanwhile, plenty of sunshine for Spain and sunny spells for Portugal, but temperatures well below average on Wednesday, recovering a little later this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thank you, Matt. Let's hear now from the King.
This is a season when our thoughts turn to celebrations with our friends and families. In the midst of this festive period, I just wanted to ask you to join me today in finding a special place in your hearts and your minds and prayers for the hundreds of thousands of people across our United Kingdom who receive a cancer diagnosis each year, and for the millions more who love and care for them. I know from my own experience that a cancer diagnosis can feel overwhelming. Yet I also know that early detection is the key that can transform treatment journeys, giving invaluable time to medical teams and to their patients the precious gift of hope. These are gifts we can all help deliver. Throughout my own cancer journey, I've been profoundly moved by what I can only call the community of care that surrounds every cancer patient. The specialists, the nurses, researchers and volunteers who work tirelessly to save and improve lives. But I have also learned something that troubles me deeply. At least 9 million people in our country are not up to date with the cancer screenings available to them. When bowel cancer is caught at the earliest stage, around 9 in 10 people survive for at least 5 years. When diagnosed late, that falls to just 1 in 10. Early diagnosis quite simply saves lives.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. And elsewhere today, European allies, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, are meeting in Paris for talks on Venezuela, the US President's threat towards Greenland, and also for peace talks on Ukraine, as Volodymyr Zelensky is also in attendance. Somebody else who's there is our man Chopper, GB News political editor, Jet Set Chopper. Chris Hope, he joins us from Paris. Bonjour, Chopper. Tell us all about it. I'll tell you what, Donald Trump didn't even mention what's going on in Paris. In fact, the only mention of anything at all to do with Europe was a funny impression of Emmanuel Macron. But what's happening there? You're on the ground, mate.
Bonjour, Monsieur Daubney. That's right. Welcome to the frozen Élysée Palace, where about 3 hours ago, European leaders, 27 of them of the Coalition of the Willing, plus Canada and the leaders of the European Union and European Council arrived here for the biggest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing since it was set up last year to respond to why Donald Trump was saying to Europe, basically go it alone and sort out this Ukraine war with Russia. You'll see behind me all the vehicles of the world leaders. They're all, their engines are running because it's so cold here. They're waiting to leave. There'll be a press conference starting within the hour or so with Keir Starmer for the UK, Friedrich Merz for Germany, Emmanuel Macron for France, of course, and Volodymyr Zelensky for Ukraine. They're hoping to make some ground here on security guarantees, which areas maybe of Ukraine invaded by Russia will be left as neutral zones. We're told by allied sources, not just Volodymyr Zelensky, that we think we are 90% towards agreeing something to offer to Russia. But of course, what does Russia say back? We haven't yet seen here Steve Witkoff, who's Donald Trump's peace envoy, or Jared Kushner, who of course is his son-in-law. They were here to represent Donald Trump. We haven't seen them at all going in. The only person to arrive by foot who didn't drive, I should say, was Keir Starmer, who came from the British Embassy very nearby. They walked in. It really is a big moment, I think. It's a new year, new impetus. What we saw from Donald Trump there about Venezuela really is focusing minds amongst Europe's leaders. They can see that, frankly, Donald Trump is moving on, I think, from the Ukraine war. He's got other bigger fish to fry as the clock ticks down on his presidency. I also think, for me, watching those 27 world leaders from the European Union and Europe and elsewhere arriving, it struck me how sidelined NATO increasingly feels. NATO was set up during the Second World War as an informal way to try and unite the UK and US, and others joined it as a NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. Well, that might well be how this coalition of the willing starts, if it does lead to boots on the ground from those countries. Where does it leave NATO? And in fact, if NATO is being threatened by this bellicose language towards Greenland by Donald Trump, what is the future of NATO? I think there can't be a NATO, European Union with a degree of an armed forces, possibly, and the coalition of willing existing at the same time. Something has got to give. So we are seeing, I think, a reshaping in a very slow but informal way, but definitely a reshaping of how we keep our security in the UK and Western Europe.
Chris Hope, can I add something else here? Perhaps it's not only the future of NATO that's at stake, but the future of Europe. We have here Europe seemingly on the sidelines, not consulted, not relevant, no power, no money to fund itself. The emergence of a new superpower, Donald Trump, doesn't give a toot's cahoot about what's going on in Paris. He doesn't care about Europe. Is this the emergence of a new world order we're seeing right before our eyes today?
Definitely. I think you're seeing with Donald Trump, he wants to control his hemisphere. What does China do? There's obviously a major summit between China and Russia later this year. And it's time that the European leaders stood up and looked after themselves more. That's what I was so struck watching them all arrive slowly across the snow here in the Élysée Palace. It's up to them now to step up and do their own defence rather than rely on America.
OK, thank you there, Chris Hope from the Champs-Élysées. I hope Mrs Chopper got you some thermal leggings for Christmas. We'll come back to you after the news. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show, including that explosive Donald Trump speech on Venezuela. And we'll be back over to Petit Paris with our man, Jet Set Chopper. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of unmissable politics. First, so here's your weather, and il fait froid. It's Alex Burkill.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Goretti is arriving later this week. It's going to bring some very wet, windy and wintry weather across particularly the southern half of the UK. But before all that, the cold and wintry weather continues with further snow issues as well. Particularly across parts of Scotland here, we do have some further snow and ice warnings through the next few days, with an occluded front that wraps around, continuing to bring a significant amount of snow to northern parts of Scotland in particular. Otherwise, we see a front pushing its way southeastwards through the rest of today and overnight. That will bring some rain, a bit of sleet, bit of snow. Behind it, yes, it is going to turn drier, but with some clear skies, temperatures plummeting widely to around, if not below freezing. So some frost, some icy patches for many of us first thing tomorrow morning. A few spots of rain, sleet and perhaps a bit of hill snow first thing tomorrow morning across some parts of England and Wales. Generally dry, generally quite bright for many, away from eastern areas where it's quite cloudy. Similar story across Northern Ireland, lots of bright skies, just a few showers here and there, and these could be a bit of a wintry mix. Southern parts of Scotland largely dry and bright, but across northern parts of Scotland we continue to see more snow pushing its way in. Snow is going to continue to build up, more travel disruption expected. Through the bulk of the day it's looking largely fine for many places across the country, except across parts of northern Scotland where it stays quite snowy. Lots of sunshine for most, but clouds starting to build across parts of western Northern Ireland and southwest England as well. It is again going to be a cold day for many despite the sunshine towards the east, strong gusty winds towards the northeast, but starting to turn milder for a little while across some parts of the southwest. That's because we do have a bit of rain arriving as we go through tomorrow evening. Then, as I mentioned at the start, Storm Goretti is arriving, a deep area of low pressure tracking to the south of the UK, bringing some very wet and windy weather to southern parts and snow for the Midlands.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A887 at Invermorriston, both directions are restricted after a road traffic incident. In Wales, the A470 northbound from Corriton to Nantgarv is slow with heavy congestion. In Warwickshire, the M6 southbound between Junction 4 and Junction 3 has a broken down vehicle with 2 lanes closed. And on the trains, the Elizabeth line has major disruption between London Paddington and Heathrow Terminal 5 and Reading, while Great Western Railway is also badly hit between London Paddington and Reading, with road transport replacing trains between Liskeard and Looe. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's a brand new year and we're giving you the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. And we've come to the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland to celebrate. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here to GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live across the UK, all the very latest news, debates and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. It's been an extraordinary day in global politics, and here's what's on today's menu. Keir Starmer jets off once again. This time, the PM is in Paris for the third time since he was elected to discuss Ukraine and Venezuela with his so-called coalition of the willing. But with Donald Trump calling all the shots once again and Europe's power fading, is it actually a coalition of the pointless? We'll be live from Paris. And 80 asylum seekers who claim to have fled civil wars and persecution of the Taliban and the Ayatollahs, well, they're claiming psychological harm for their treatment in Britain. The immigrants, including Afghans, claim they haven't been given sufficient time to rest in Blighty. Once again, have the lunatics taken over our asylum system? And the DVLA has announced an eye test clampdown on drivers aged over 70, but they dodged a graduated driving licence on younger drivers, with drivers under 25 4 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured. Are OAPs once again a soft target? And West Midlands police chiefs are today being interrogated in Parliament. The cops face claims that they consulted mosques that allegedly hosted anti-Semitic hate preachers before taking that decision to banish Rady fans from a football match in Birmingham in October. Should these top cops get the job? And as snow grips the nation, causing major travel disruption and school closures, stay tuned to find out if your area will be affected by the big snow whiteout. And that's all coming up in your next hour. 90 minutes Donald Trump spoke for an astonishing press conference. Well, actually, he was at a Republican fan base meeting in DC. Everything was covered off. Venezuela, an Emmanuel Macron impression, an impression of a trans weightlifter. The socialist protesters are the ugliest people on the planet in their frayed hats. No mention of Keir Starmer, only one mention of Macron when he did an impression of him. And it got me thinking, is Europe pointless, sidelined, immaterial? Are we seeing a new world order in global politics? Donald Trump totally at the helm. Meanwhile, our Prime Minister in Paris, fighting out for scraps on the sideline. As the sun sets, perhaps, on the European continent and our axis of power, are we seeing the emergence of a new world order? We've got our man in Paris and full discussion of that astonishing speech there from Donald Trump back here in the studio, as well as that astonishing story that 80 so-called one-in, one-out immigrants are claiming psychological torture, not from the Taliban, not from the Ayatollahs, not from a civil war in Sudan, but from immigration officers in Britain. Once again, the lunatics have taken over the asylum system. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your sale. Use that QR code on your screen now. That tickles your fancy. But now it tickles everybody's fancy. Is that man, Sam Francis, with your news headlines.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. 3 minutes past 5. Senior officers from West Midlands Police have rejected claims they were searching for a reason to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from a match against Aston Villa. MBs are currently questioning police chiefs over whether intelligence was pulled together to justify that decision, which followed disorder at previous Maccabi games. Police admitted a mistake was made when an officer carried out a Google search for intelligence, but insist the wider details were properly addressed. Later today, MPs on the Home Affairs Select Committee will also question Birmingham City Council as the police watchdog considers whether to investigate. Well, speaking at that committee hearing, Assistant Chief Constable Mike O'Hara said the ban was a reasonable move to protect the public and pointed to threats involving both local residents and visiting fans.
The commanders tried to make the right decision. That was reasonable in the circumstances. You've got a very hot community reception. You've got Maccabi Tel Aviv and the Dutch police saying, we feel they actively targeted community members. Those two things together posed a sufficient risk. And the challenge around risk decision-making is public safety has got to be at the heart of it. So, again, I understand the frustration, but there is no conspiracy here. This was a decision based on safety.
Also this evening, Sir Keir Starmer is meeting world leaders in Paris to discuss next steps towards peace in Ukraine. He's joining President Volodymyr Zelensky and more than 30 allied nations at talks hosted by Emmanuel Macron. Zelensky says a US-backed peace plan is close to agreement, but key disagreements remain over territory in the east of the country. Leaders are now discussing how Ukraine could be protected after any possible ceasefire, including possible international security guarantees. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has hailed what he called an amazing military achievement in Venezuela, prompting applause from lawmakers during a speech earlier in Washington. Speaking at the newly renamed Trump Kennedy Center, he claimed American forces had caught Venezuela by surprise. Mr. Trump also accused the radical left of paying people to protest the removal of Nicolas Maduro, a claim, though, the White House has not backed with evidence. He went on to promise a major ramp-up in US defense production, declaring, "No one can take us." While speaking at that announcement earlier today, Donald Trump said American forces caught Caracas by surprise.
They knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. You know, our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and they're not protected, and they were. But it was so brilliant. The electricity for almost the entire country was, boom, turned on. That's when they knew there was a problem. There was no electricity. Caracas said, there's no electricity. It's not a... The only people with lights were the people that had candles. It was just off. So we sort of got him a little by surprise, but it was brilliant tactically. It was an incredible thing.
Sir Keir Starmer and several European leaders have said they will not stop defending Greenland's territorial integrity amid renewed threats from Donald Trump to annex the territory. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain and the UK say Arctic security is a shared priority and critical to transatlantic stability. Downing Street insists the US president does not pose a threat to Europe, saying the UK's special relationship with Washington remains strong. Greenland's Prime Minister, meanwhile, says the territory cannot be taken, stressing its status is protected by international law. And the Technology Secretary has warned Elon Musk's social media site X that it must act urgently after its AI chatbot known as Grok was used to create sexualized deepfake images, including of children. Liz Kendall said the content was absolutely appalling and backed Ofcom, which has demanded answers from Musk's AI company XAI. The regulator is now investigating whether safeguards are failing under the Online Safety Act after reports Grok can digitally undress women without consent. X says users who generate illegal content will face consequences. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
7 minutes past 5, a roundup of the markets for you. The pound will buy $1.352 and 1.155 euros. The price of gold is £3,300 and 34 pence. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 10,076 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, for the past hour and a half, the US President Donald Trump has been speaking on a huge range of issues, including Venezuela and the might and the quality of the US military. Now, let's have a wee reminder of what the US President had to say.
But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody. We don't want to have it. We don't have a discussion, but you read all and you see everything else. Nobody could have done that. Nobody has our weapons. Nobody has the quality of our weapons.
Well, it's got to be said that Donald Trump seems to be in a very, very good mood following their mission, that extraordinary, audacious mission to capture the former Venezuelan president Maduro. But this was one of Donald Trump's more unusual speeches.
Weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, yeah. But she gets it, and Dropped the thing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding.
Now, believe it or not, that was an impression of Donald Trump doing an impression of a trans weightlifter. He talked about the inequality, the unfairness of biological men and women's sports and how easy they find it to lift weights. Yet that actually happened. That's the most powerful man in the world. And I'm joined in the studio by GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, welcome to Westminster. We've been here enraptured, really, by Donald Trump since the start of the show. We only said 20 words in 90 minutes. I think the audience might thank Donald Trump for that. There's hardly any of us. It was an incredible speech, talking about how mostly Cubans were killed in the kidnap of former President Maduro from Venezuela. He talks about the might of the US military. He talks about Joe Biden having no clue what's going on now, and he still doesn't. He talks about trans weightlifters. He did an impression of Emmanuel Macron. He talks about borders. He talks about the protesters supporting Maduro being the ugliest people on the planet. He talks about everything except Greenland, except what they're obsessed about today in Paris. I put it to you. Here's a man totally at ease with himself, totally aware. He's the most powerful man in the planet. And the political leaders in Paris are a coalition of the pointless.
Well, it felt like Donald Trump was inhabiting a sort of parallel universe to certainly what's happening in Europe at the moment, because he was in a very good mood, didn't have a care in the world. Of course, they've just executed this incredible operation, legal or not legal, to take out the Venezuelan leader and install a new one. But yes, he is the most powerful man on the world. He seems to feel that the rules do not apply to him or to America. He's now saying this is our hemisphere. They've done what they've done to Venezuela. They are warning Colombia, Cuba, issuing pretty direct threats to Greenland, and huge concern, understandably, now in Europe over what their intention to Greenland might be. This is something that Donald Trump has been saying for a long time, but very overt threats now overnight. Steve Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, saying nobody's going to fight the US militarily over the future of Greenland, because, of course, we couldn't win. But the idea of one NATO ally, the US, potentially attacking another NATO ally, Greenland and Denmark, is quite... Well, they haven't said it won't.
It won't happen.
We don't know that.
Is this not just Donald Trump doing what Donald Trump does? He throws his grenade of ideas out there. The entire world loses its mind, and then something more simplistic and something approaching a deal settles down. The point is we don't know. And that's why we have to watch these press conferences for over 90 minutes, because he could literally say anything.
Well, he could say anything. I mean, Number 10 absolutely did not want to discuss hypotheticals, as they called it, because they're desperate not to criticise Donald Trump for understandable reasons. We need his support desperately in Europe, especially with Ukraine. And we have the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, a coalition that was very hastily scrambled as a result of Trump picking up the phone to Putin in February of last year, and then what J.D. Vance, the Vice President, said at the Munich Security Conference. At any point, America could simply decide to walk away from Europe and basically go, hey, you know, guys, you do you.
Precisely.
Europe's security is your problem. You've not paid your way. We're going to deal with America and the Americas. And actually, we'd like Canada and we'd like Greenland too, because you can carve the world up into blocks. And if we're back to that sort of strongman world, the US could take that chunk, China could take Taiwan, Russia could maybe take Ukraine and a couple of other Baltic states too. Let's see.
It was an astonishing 90 minutes. Thank you for assisting me as ever. Now, elsewhere today, European allies, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, were meeting in Paris for talks on Venezuela, the US president's threats towards Greenland, and also for peace talks on Ukraine, as Volodymyr Zelensky is also in attendance. Somebody else who's in attendance is our man. It's our GBNews political editor, Chris Hope, Jet Set Chopper, who joins us from Paris. Bonjour, Chopper. What's happening there? Look, we're just saying here, this feels to me today like a new world order is emerging. We have the true axis of power in the United States. Donald Trump, a man top of his game with the world's most powerful military. Meanwhile, in Paris, seems like we have world leaders, the coalition of the pointless. You're there. Tell us all about it.
I think it's a bit unfair, the coalition of the pointless. I think today, Martin, is the biggest gathering of the coalition of the willing, which is hastily assembled informally in response to that bellicose language from Donald Trump saying he doesn't understand why the US is on the hook for helping Europe sort out that Russian invasion and bring about peace here. Why are they on the hook for that? He's got his own battles to fight, his own sphere of influence to operate in, and that appears to be Central America and possibly Greenland, of course, and that is a concern, I think, a big concern for European leaders gathering here. You can see behind me that all the world leaders' cars are getting ready to leave because the meeting should be wrapping up, but we think there may be a delay to the timing of a press conference, which was to be expecting within the next hour. That may have gone away now because I think they are approaching getting some form of agreement on what to do next. Watch them arrive here, though, being greeted by Emmanuel Macron at the Elysee Palace, and Keir Starmer being the only leader to walk up across the crunching snow to greet the French president. It struck me, it does feel much more meaty than previous meetings. I think, in a sense, the way that NATO started out as an informal treaty between the EU, the UK and America back during the Second World War, and then built into something different and bigger with the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. I think that's also what's happening here. I can't imagine that once this coalition of the willing gets up and running, and we're expecting them to set up some form of coalition of the willing operation in Paris with the US and Ukraine and other members of this grouping. Where does that leave NATO? Donald Trump expressing desirous thoughts about Greenland, which of course is owned by a Denmark protectorate, a country. Why on earth will NATO carry on? I can see why this coalition of the willing could be the new form of what NATO was as we go further into the 21st century.
Thank you very much there, Chris Hope. And of course, we're going to have, I think, another press conference, around about 5:45 perhaps. Keir Starmer set to address the world from that coalition there of the willing. Thank you, Chris Hope, our man in Paris. Now, meanwhile, back to matters of asylum today. Fresh claims from migrants facing deportation after small boat crossings. Detainees at a centre near Heathrow say Home Office treatment has left them traumatised, isolated and unwell, prompting calls for a UN probe. And the Home Office, of course, strongly denies any wrongdoing. And joining me now to discuss this is the human rights lawyer, great friend of the show, Shab Khan. Mr. Khan, welcome to the show and a very, very happy New Year to you, sir. It's a pleasure to see you. It truly is. But I suspect we're going to have another little fallout here, because I put it to you. If we're having people coming to Britain from, they claim they're fleeing civil war in Sudan, they claim they're fleeing the Taliban, they claim they're fleeing the Ayatollahs in Iran, but it's only when they get to Britain they're suddenly saying they're traumatised. It's only when they get to Britain they're suddenly saying they're suffering psychological distress, harm, fear and humiliation for what's going on in an immigration detainment centre. I put it to you, these are snowflake asylum seekers.
Hi, Happy New Year. I don't think anyone's saying that they were perfectly fit and healthy when they arrived, and suddenly they are. Suddenly now they're in shock or they're traumatized. But the whole point is they landed here. Whenever they arrived, however they arrived, they were already traumatized, suffering from PTSD, victims of torture, victims of rape, victims of whatever persecution they faced back home. And then when they come, we put them in indefinite detention. And that's the issue, that, it's not just fit and healthy people, that we can lock them up, treat them up however. But the point is, these are very, very vulnerable people. And it's good to see that finally being accepted by everyone now, that these are already people who have been through a lot, and they're not, fit and healthy when they arrive. So we need to recognize that and treat them according to their vulnerabilities.
But that sounds great on paper if we would believe that they're fleeing war zones, but they're not. They're fleeing France. They come over on dinghies, and most of them are put straight toot sweet into four-star hotels where the food's free, the heating's free, everything is free. A lot of people in Britain would love that kind of lavish lifestyle as the thermometer drops. Come off it. They're taking the mickey, aren't they?
A few things there. Firstly, obviously, these are people who are actually detained, indefinitely detained. And that basically means that they're in a detention centre. They're not in the hotels. They're not in the community. They're basically locked up. They can't leave. And we don't know how long they are. So, Britain is the only country in Europe that's indefinite immigration detention, which basically means there's no time limit. We have seen people detained in these camps or detention centres for years. And obviously, I mean, I don't think, I just don't understand how it could even be arguable that, no, that is actually healthy for them. Or, we're surprised or shocked that somehow the mental health is, affected by that. Of course, I think that should be something, that should be generally accepted, that, yes, their mental health is, of course, anyone locked up. And like they said, if you read that letter, the points they're making, we're not criminals. And in fact, some of them or others who are brought back, in fact, to detention centres from prison, for instance, after serving criminal sentence, they are all put there together. There might be many children there, people, we call them age dispute cases, where they're seeing the children, and the Home Office doesn't believe that.
Some women and children, but a very, very small amount of them. The huge majority of them are men of a good age. Shao Kong, we have to leave it there. I have another guest to get to. But look, we're going to see much more of you in the new year. Looking forward to it, my friend. Thank you very, very much indeed. I'm also joined in the studio by the director of Destination Dover, Jack Hadfield. Jack, you sat through that there. I want to put it to you again. This is proof to a lot of our viewers that the lunatics have taken over the asylum system.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think, for one thing, it's important to note that these migrants are in a detention centre, not the asylum hotel. So these guys basically face expulsion back to France under this supposed one-in, one-out policy, which, of course, has only removed 200 or so migrants out of the over 41,000 that came last year alone. So it really is in their best interest to claim, oh, I've got anxiety, depression, mental health. It's very possible this is a last-ditch strategy, say, oh, you can't deport me because of human rights, because I've got anxiety and I'm self-harming, so you can't throw me back to France now. And again, it is very important to note as well that, of course, the Home Office has completely denied all of these claims. They've said that they get free healthcare, including mental health care, free dentistry as well, which, of course, normal people in Britain don't get as well. We have to pay for these things. And these migrants are also given mobile phones, not just not having their phones taken away from them. Obviously, this policy was only been reintroduced by this government. So
Jack, it's worth
treated very well.
Point out, despite what Shab Khan there, that the vast majority of these detainees are young adults, men, between 17 and 30, able-bodied. They claim to be reporting widespread depression, anxiety, insomnia and emotional breakdowns. Well, so are the British taxpayers. Yeah. Well, they're the ones funding all this.
Exactly, and I think people will ask, well, we're spending all this money housing men who came into the country illegally, but what about all the homeless Brits? Just round the corner from here in the Westminster studio, I saw last night somebody with a sign saying that they're a homeless veteran. These people are on the streets of this country. The government doesn't help them at all. Where is where is the help for the government from them? The government cares, I do think, cares far more about people who illegally enter this country, break their laws, than the actual citizens of this country.
And if we have proven situations where the vast majority of people are throwing away their identity in the Channel, claiming to be who knows who, from who knows where, stands to reason that there'll be a percentage of them saying, well, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm afraid about my situation if I'm sent back to France, because we know that people will try anything to stay in Hotel Britannia.
Exactly. We're known to be a soft touch by the rest of the world, which is why they're making their way over from France to here. We will put them up in the hotels. We'll put them up in HMOs. And as we've seen, everything that I covered last summer on the asylum hotel protests, we know that a lot of them go on to commit serious crimes. These people have no right to be in this country. The only reason that they're allowed to stay here to begin with, and the reason we can't deport them so easily, is because of completely outdated UN Refugee Convention, human rights laws. Frankly, we need to tear these things up so that we can actually treat the British people the way that they deserve to be treated, and make sure that criminals who cross the Channel illegally don't get to leech off the taxpayer.
Jack Hadfield, always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much for joining us today in the studio in Westminster. I hope to see much more of you in 2026. Thanks for your time. Now, coming up next, we discuss 3 teenagers who have been jailed for an horrific, fatal gang attack on a homeless man who ended up dead, and where their sentences were too lenient. 2 of them took selfies as the man was lying there gravely injured. I'll be joined by Stephen Barrett next. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Time's 5:27. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a harrowing story now that sums up, I think, modern broken Britain. 3 teenagers have been jailed for a brutal gang attack, left a homeless man dead near King's Cross Station. Prosecutors say it was a vicious county lines punishment that spiralled into murder. Sentencing at the Old Bailey, the judge said the violence was severe and relentless, but the sentences were too lenient. Well, join me now to discuss this is the barrister and the writer, great friend of the show, and Happy New Year to you, Stephen Barrett. Stephen, welcome to the show. This case for me sums up so many things that are treacherously wrong with modern Britain. 3 teens kicked a man to death and then posed for selfies, and many believe that the sentences they handed down are an utter joke.
Yes, so the gentleman's name was Anthony Marks, and I think it's quite important that we remember that his name was Anthony Marks and that we remember him because he lived alone on our streets and ultimately he found his death alone on our streets. And that is itself tragic. Many people will be wondering why we cannot look after our own homeless when we look after every boat migrant who comes by rubber dinghy. That is, I think, a point worth making. The next point is to point out just how horrific and barbarous the behavior of these then children, largely children, were. It really is monstrous. And I think we have to start asking questions about how we're raising our young people, that they feel able to engage in what is just utter barbarous violence. Now, it's a simple fact, Martin, and the Romans knew it 2,000 years ago, that civilization is taught. okay, and you teach a child, you take a human child and you don't teach it human civilization, it'll end up like Mowgli. There's a sort of Disney-esque version of that, but it's actually quite ugly. But if you teach any human child civilization and how to behave, the child will grow up and behave well. And really, these children have their lives wrecked too by their own barbarism. That's not to excuse them in any way. And I agree. I think that the sentences are too poor. I think we have to reflect on a society. We decided, if you go back far enough, we treated kids like adults. And then at a certain point, we said, we're too civilized now. We should actually be more lenient on younger humans than we are on older humans. And so we put in our sort of nostalgic, sort of twee, sort of special treatment for young people. I'm not sure that really ought to apply. 16 years for brutally taking a man's life, either knowing you were going to do it or completely reckless as to whether or not he lived or died. I mean, the facts of this are so grotesque, I don't actually want to say them, certainly not at this time of the day, but I mean, I don't really want to believe that they could happen. But 16 years is not enough. Then the manslaughter sentences for the others, you know, they're effectively, we're saying they're going to serve 2 years or less. I mean, really, is that it? Is that all Mr. Marx's life was worth? I think we as a society really have to reflect on this, reflect on how we're raising children. I mean, yes, to a certain extent, the pandemic was always going to lead to an outburst of violence. But in a sense, we should have been ready for that too. And that's because fear causes humans to be violent. But these humans were not fearful. They were enjoying the grotesque power that they had over a man much older than them, but made frail by overuse of substances and no doubt sleeping out every night in the cold. You know, these are young, fit human beings who just battered him to death for sport. There is a story to it, an alleged drug story. All I ever say on that is that, of course, that the barrister isn't saying that it's truthful. He's only repeating what his clients tell him, and the dead don't get to give their version of events because they're dead.
Stephen, I just need to interject to point out something that viewers may have missed. We get those mug shots back on the screen. Two of the assailants are female. The main murderer, who got 16 years, was a male. The other two people there, they're young women. Now, should that concern me more? Should it chill me more? Perhaps not in this age of equality, Stephen Barrett, but it does. I'm chilled to the core to the notion that two young teenage girls, a little older than my own daughter, could assist in such a barbarous crime and then pose on TikTok for selfies over the prostrate, injured, homeless man, the frail, vulnerable person. Stephen Barrett, where did we go so wrong?
Well, I do think we haven't talked about parenting enough. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we haven't talked about parenting since the mid-90s. I mean, it's a major part of human civilization. None of us are going to live forever. So how we raise the next generation of humans really, really matters. And it's quite obvious that all three young people were not very well raised in order to get into this circumstance. I think it's nice that you're shocked that they are women. One of the great... I mean, civilization is just a curtain that can always be pulled aside. But one of the great joys of a true civilization is believing that women are inherently somehow better than men. They aren't, of course, but it's a nice indulgence that we all get to believe in. If we're going back to bare bones, if this is how we're going to live, that our homeless are going to be beaten up and murdered by our young people, then we're going to have to, I'm afraid you're going to have to get a bit more shocked than this, Martin, because it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. You know, what we can say is that actually, to its credit, the criminal justice system dealt with this relatively quickly in a speedy way. I know it gets criticism. I'm not always terribly kind on it. In terms of the individual judge, no doubt he will have been bound by sentencing guidelines. There was nothing in what he said that made me think he was a bleeding heart. He was quite tough. There was some argument that actually the hospital had messed up and he wasn't having any truck with that. He was like, well, it's not the hospital's fault. They didn't batter the man to death. So what I think is going on is, again, an issue you and I have talked about many times before. Sentencing guidelines do not reflect what people expect, and they probably aren't ready for our new barbarous age. You know, they are a hangover from the 90s when everything was fine and everything was good. And, you know, remember the late Radiohead lyric, I wish it was the 60s. I wish that something would happen. Well, we don't live in those ages where we're so comfortable that we're bored. We now live in a much more terrifying and difficult age, and we're going to have to be robust in this, and we're going to have to grow up fast, roll up our sleeves, and be a lot tougher than we are.
Stephen Barrett, I think you're absolutely right, and it does. I don't know why. It just really, really shocks me and saddens me, and it moves me to tears to think that a guy who's 51 can be just beaten so badly in ways we can't even go into, as you said. And then 2 teenage girls posed for selfies. I don't recognise that in the people that I remember. I don't recognise that in my country. Something's going gravely wrong, but thank you, Stephen Barrett, for helping us try and process this madness. That's what we have to try and do together. I think sometimes this show seems like therapy. Stephen Barrett, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Now, still to come, the Prime Minister and other European allies are about to hold a press conference amid now multiple conflicts and threats across the world, including from the United States. The coalition of the willing. Sir Keir Starmer there in Paris. Press conference coming up soon. Playing more throughout the rest of the show. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school in these icy conditions, as I always say, please stay safe. Here's your traffic and your travel update, and please stick with us.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A93 is closed at the Snowgate at Spittal of Glenshie because of adverse weather. In South Wales, the A470 northbound from Corryton to Nantgarv is slow with congestion. In Cumbria, the A595 northbound between the A5094 south and north of Whitehaven is running around 10 minutes late and should ease between 5:45 and 6 this evening. And on the trains, there is major disruption on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington and Heathrow Terminal 5 and Reading, and on Great Western Railway between Paddington and Reading, with replacement buses between Liskeard and Looe. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Goretti is arriving later this week. It's going to bring some very wet, windy and wintry weather across particularly the southern half of the UK. But before all that, the cold and wintry weather continues with further snow issues as well. Particularly across parts of Scotland here, we do have some further snow and ice warnings through the next few days, with an occluded front that wraps around, continuing to bring a significant amount of snow to northern parts of Scotland in particular. Otherwise, we see a front pushing its way southeastwards through the rest of today and overnight. That will bring some rain, a bit of sleet, bit of snow. Behind it, yes, it is going to turn drier, but with some clear skies, temperatures plummeting widely to around, if not below freezing. So some frost, some icy patches for many of us first thing tomorrow morning. A few spots of rain, sleet and perhaps a bit of hill snow first thing tomorrow morning across some parts of England and Wales. Generally dry, generally quite bright for many, away from eastern areas where it's quite cloudy. Similar story across Northern Ireland, lots of bright skies, just a few showers here and there, and these could be a bit of a wintry mix. Southern parts of Scotland, largely dry and bright, but across northern parts of Scotland, we continue to see more snow pushing its way in. Snow's going to continue to build up, more travel disruption expected. Through the bulk of the day, it's looking largely fine for many places across the country, except across parts of northern Scotland where it stays quite snowy. Lots of sunshine for most, but clouds starting to build across parts of western Northern Ireland and southwest England as well. It is again going to be a cold day for many despite the sunshine towards the east, strong gusty winds towards the northeast, but starting to turn milder for a little while across some parts of the southwest. That's because we do have a bit of rain arriving as we go through tomorrow evening. Then, as I mentioned at the start, Storm Goretti is arriving, a deep area of low pressure tracking to the south of the UK, bringing some very wet and windy weather to southern parts and snow for the Midlands.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice
first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Time is 5:39. Now, big changes could be coming to Britain's roads, especially for older drivers, because ministers, the DVLA, they want eyesight checks compulsorily and possible cognitive tests, tougher alcohol rules and also new seatbelt penalties, all, of course, in the name of road safety. But is this sensible reform or is it unfair, targeting older drivers? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the charity director at Age UK, Caroline Abrahams. Caroline, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. Caroline, we can all agree that safer roads are desirable, but I put it to you, the vast majority, proportionately, of road accidents involve younger people. There's never any clampdown on them. Is it always pensioners that seem to be targeted?
Well, good evening. We don't know yet, because all that's happened is there's been a few quotes come out about the driver's strategy the government is producing, but it hasn't produced it yet. So in a way, we'll be interested, as you've just implied, in seeing, is this a proportionate and balanced package of measures impacting where things are really going to make a difference? Because, as you say, actually, most accidents aren't caused by older people, and they're certainly not caused by older people with eyesight problems. So obviously, we all want to be safe on the roads. But let's see what the government's actually proposing and then take a view.
Absolutely right to point out the fact that when you look at these statistics, because one of the proposals that doesn't seem to be enacted is a so-called graduated licence for younger drivers, so more restrictions on those who are statistically the most likely to get involved in serious accidents. In fact, it's worth pointing out that drivers aged under 24 are 4 times more likely to be involved in a serious or fatal accident as opposed to drivers aged over 70, who tend to be cautious, conservative and take much more care. The government's just chicken. It won't go after the actual perpetrator. It just always goes after pensioners.
Well, we don't know yet. I mean, on the question of should there be mandatory eye tests for people now when they have to renew their licence, I think that might be an appropriate safeguard, but, and there's a big but, there was an older drivers task force connected to the government, which looked at all the evidence around this question in great detail. And they said, yeah, there ought to be a mandatory test, just as there is in actually many other European countries. However, they also said that making people renew their licences at age 70 was now too young, because we're all living longer. Apparently, the age of 70 was chosen rather arbitrarily in 1971, more than 50 years ago. Since then, people have been living much longer, we're healthier at later ages, and cars are also safer. So they said, OK, we need to put the age up to 75, not 70. And I think the evidence shows that where older people are involved in accidents, it's more likely after the age of 75, and then more likely again after the age of 85. So actually, just saying that people should have a compulsory eye test at 70 does seem a bit negative about older drivers. But of course, we need to see the overall package when it's finally published.
And also, you know, I'm obsessed with data, Caroline, and the point is older drivers, they make up around 8% of all licensed drivers, but they're only involved in a tiny minority of crashes. That they, you know, all the evidence suggests older drivers take as many cautions as they can. They slow down, they're more sensible, and there's a good case to reward older drivers.
Well, certainly, my experience is that most older people, the overwhelming majority of older people, are incredibly responsible in how they drive, and they worry about when they should stop. We often talk to older people about that, and of course their families. So it does seem, on the face of it, at risk of being a bit ageist. But as I say, we'll need to see what's also being proposed for other groups. We know that they're going to take a bit more action on people who take drugs and drive. That's a really big and horrible problem. Obviously not likely to impact most older people. That's a good thing. And also perhaps tightening up the rules around alcohol to make them more on a par with Scotland, and the use of seatbelts in back seats. I think all of that sounds eminently sensible, but I do hope, as you've said, that they're not going to be targeting older people in an inappropriate way. That actually won't ultimately make any of us very much safer.
Karen, it's also worth pointing out on that alcohol point, they're reducing the legal limit from 35 micrograms to 22, the same as in Scotland. That's about 1 point, or actually, it might be too dangerous to have 1 point. Now, again, back to data, I'm obsessed with this stuff. Scotland expected there to be an 11-fold, decrease in accidents. It didn't happen. The alcohol change in Scotland had a negligible impact. So it might actually have a bad impact on rural pubs. But on the whole, what about cognitive tests for older people? That will really, really frighten a lot of people. What does that even mean?
Well, that seems a bit strange, to be honest. I'm not sure where that's come from. And again, I don't think there's any evidence that we've got lots of people having accidents because they are suffering from cognitive decline in later life. It's absolutely true that cognitive decline does impact quite a number of people in later life, but I think there's no evidence that it's linked to car crashes of any kind. I noticed that the minister was quoted in the media today as saying she was concerned about the need to take action because of a growing older population. But I don't think that is something in and of itself to be concerned about. I think, as you say, we need more clear data about the links between exactly what people are doing and what's causing accidents. And as I say, the evidence isn't terribly strong, I don't think, about older people. Yes, fine, let's have compulsory eye tests. I mean, that could be the sort of thing other countries have done as well. It might make sense. But let's not just do it on its own. Let's also raise the age, because where we are now is outdated.
Yeah, Carol Abrams, final point from me. Rather than going after law-abiding, respectful pensioners who pootle around and mind their own business, go after the uninsured drivers, go after the yobbos, go after the real problem, and don't, as always, target pensioners, who I believe we owe a great debt to as a society. Charity Director, Age UK, Caroline Abrams, always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much for joining us today on GB News. Now, if there's some holiday sun this year, you can blame me with the weather so cold in Blighty. Here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The cold weather we're experiencing in the UK also affecting Spain at the moment. Warm winds, meanwhile, in Greece, but with some heavy rain ahead of an area of low pressure that is moving through parts of Italy. So wet for Italy, Croatia, much of Greece during Wednesday. Meanwhile, plenty of sunshine for Spain and sunny spells for Portugal, but temperatures well below average on Wednesday, recovering a little later this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
9:30.
It is indeed.
And as the new year approaches, we've got, for the very first time, our GB News charity calendar. It's on sale, and 100% of the price. I should point out, actually, the pictures were taken by you and voted for by you because we've got so many entries. So you've made this. 100% of the profits go to our 2025 charity partner, which is the London Taxi Drivers Charity for Children. And that actually is also proudly supported by Her Majesty the Queen. Really, really lovely
But look, I'm
pictures.
just going to take... There's a... Oh, hold on a sec. There we go. Look, how lovely are those pictures?
It's really nice. It's what is most important is the fact that, as we say, 100% of the money is going to charity. If you pick one up at the GB News shop online, and the chairman of the Taxi Drivers Charity for London is Anthony Moore, and is here. It's great to see you.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about what the charity does.
We do
several events a year. We take kids to the seaside as a group of taxis. So this year we had 80 taxis transferring around about 200 children. We went to the zoo this year, and so we've done that as an event. Everybody gives up their time. The taxi drivers just give up their time, all just so that the kids can have a good time. We've got our Christmas party, or the Mad Hatters party. That's in January, and we've got now 700 and... We've had to limit the numbers this year. We've got 720 children coming at the moment. Wow. But they will be entertained by singers, dancers. We've got the King's Welsh Guards turning up to give them the dimensions of the dance floor. So they're coming to do, in their full regalia, they hang around, hats on children, photographs. So, you know, we do several things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back, 10 to 6. We've got live pictures there from Paris. Of course, the Coalition of the Willing, the meeting of European and other world leaders from 35 countries, 27 heads of state met today in Paris, including, of course, our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. And we're soon expecting to hear from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and other European allies following that meeting today in Paris, ahead of that press conference. Let's get some analysis of what we can expect to see on the menu. Just to repeat, there are live pictures from a very, very chilly Paris and a chilly reception, perhaps, certainly from Donald Trump. I'm joined by Catherine Forster here in the studio. Catherine, perhaps I've been uncharitable today, referring to this as what I seem to be a collection of satellite figures where a power is waning, the sun is setting on the hemisphere of Europe as a superpower. Donald Trump acting with impunity in Venezuela, dishing out plans or whatever about Greenland, telling NATO they've got to spend 5%. And I've called them today a coalition of the pointless. You've chastised me in the outbreaks, Catherine. You're saying I'm being uncharitable. Tell us why you think this talking shop has any point.
Well, Chris Hope said he thought you were being a bit unreasonable as well. And for the simple reason, what choice do we have? This is a war in Europe. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Russia now has an economy that is built on war, and the chances are, if they get a good deal with Ukraine, if they get given territory that they haven't even managed to win, that they will, if they are rewarded, that they will rebuild, they will rearm, and then in a few years they'll come for maybe Estonia, but possibly a NATO
But Donald Trump will do that deal. None of this lot will ever say.
But it's our continent. It's our continent. Now, sure, we haven't spent what we should have spent on defence for a long time. We've had the peace dividend. We didn't think we needed to. In retrospect, that was obviously a big mistake. But look, we're stepping up now. Now, I was at the first very hastily scrambled Coalition of the Willing back in February last year, following the Munich Security Conference, following Donald Trump picking up the phone to Putin, talking for an hour and a half, totally blindsiding Europe. I don't think European leaders have got any choice but to get together and work out how and what they can do to support. But we have to do something, because at some point the fighting will end. No, they have been working behind the scenes over many meetings, some physical, some virtual, with Canada, with Japan, to work out how and what they can provide when the fighting stops. What else would you
Catherine,
have them do?
I have to move on, because up next is Jubes & Co. You'd never accuse her of being a coalition of the pointless. Here's Jubes & Co. What's on your menu, Jubes? OK, Catherine, she's not quite ready. You think I'm being rude, don't you, about the coalition of the pointless? You honestly think I'm overstepping the mark?
I don't know what you would expect. What you'd expect them just to sit there and do nothing and wait for Donald Trump and Putin to just
it won't make any
sort
difference.
out the world between them.
Donald Trump will do whatever he wants in Ukraine
he will.
with Putin. He'll do whatever he wants in Greenland, and they won't have a say.
Well, you know, we live in Europe, and we've got to do what we can, I think. spending more on defence, a lot more on defence would be good. I mean, the government chats a lot about it. I asked at the briefing, the lobby briefing today about that, but they say, oh, you know, we're getting there, maybe not quickly enough.
Gavin Forster, thank you for putting up with me all day today. And Donald Trump up next is Jubes & Co. First, though, here's your weather. I'll see you tomorrow, 3 till 6.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Goretti is arriving later this week. It's going to bring some very wet, windy and wintry weather across particularly the southern half of the UK. But before all that, the cold and wintry weather continues with further snow issues as well. Particularly across parts of Scotland here, we do have some further snow and ice warnings through the next few days, with an occluded front that wraps around, continuing to bring a significant amount of snow to northern parts of Scotland in particular. Otherwise, we see a front pushing its way southeastwards through the rest of today and overnight. That will bring some rain, a bit of sleet, bit of snow. Behind it, yes, it is going to turn drier, but with some clear skies, temperatures plummeting widely to around, if not below freezing. So some frost, some icy patches for many of us first thing tomorrow morning. A few spots of rain, sleet and perhaps a bit of hill snow first thing tomorrow morning across some parts of England and Wales. Generally dry, generally quite bright for many, away from eastern areas where it's quite cloudy. Similar story across Northern Ireland, lots of bright skies, just a few showers here and there, and these could be a bit of a wintry mix. Southern parts of Scotland largely dry and bright, but across northern parts of Scotland we continue